I'd like to call the regular school committee meeting to order. Today is November 10th, 2020. We are starting the meeting at 6:09 p.m. A couple of announcements before we go to the agenda. Pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order modifying the state's open meeting law issued March 12, 2020, the November 10, 2020 meeting of the PV School Committee will be held at the library of the Higgins Middle School for school committee members, superintendent, assistant superintendent, and central office administrators as requested by the superintendent. In accordance with the governor's order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, the regular meeting of the PV School Committee will not allow in-person attendance to members of the public, but every effort will be made for the public to adequately access the meeting in real time via technological means. Alternative public access to this meeting will be provided in the following manner. We are being broadcast live by PVD Access TV. Real-time public participation can be addressed to the PV School Committee utilizing Zoom virtual meeting software for the remote access. The application will allow users to view the meeting and make a comment during public participation. We will be going to public participation later in the meeting, and please, as has been done in the past, just raise your hand and the superintendent and the committee will certainly recognize all people that would like to speak. We are also, the minutes are being taken by our school committee recording secretary, Leanna Harris, as well. All right, I'd like to start the meeting with a call to order. If everybody could please rise for a moment of silence. Okay, thank you. And if you could please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and we have a number of guests here today. People who've been working extremely hard, and I wanted to thank all of our principals, vice principals that are here today, working hard through these very difficult times. So I know we have some school improvement plans. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Do roll call first? Roll call members?
Oh, roll call to go to superintendent's report?
No, the attendance, just for attendance.
Oh, we have to do attendance? All right. Attendance, roll call, please.
Under the governor's order.
All right.
Mr. Amico?
Present.
Mr. Arnott?
Present.
Mr. Hoffman?
Present.
Mr. Rubio?
Present.
And Mr.
Present.
Okay. Excellent. We do have our superintendent, Dr. Josh Vidala, with us, assistant superintendent Chris Lord, Dr. Chris Lord, as well as Joe Scanlon, our school business manager. And if there's no objection, I'd like to go to our superintendent's report so we can go right to the school improvement plans. Dr. Vidala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight we have six school improvement plans. I'd like to begin by inviting Principal Magno and Assistant Principal Haas from Peabody Veterans Memorial High School.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Turn it over to you.
All right.
Magna.
All right, so first couple of slides, we're going to see just our usual demographic data taken from the DESE public profiles. A couple of interesting points on our demographic data is our, looking at the numbers here, our Hispanic community continues to increase. It's been a trend for the last 5 or 6 years. So looking at these numbers, we are making sure that we're planning for all of our stakeholders. On the next slide. Again, looking at our select populations of students. In this slide, again, high needs and economically disadvantaged population. Another trend that we're seeing that consistently over the past few years has been on the increase. Looking at our enrollment data, we're up about 50 students this year. We're also including our special ed postgrads that weren't previously included in our student numbers. And looking at the data for this year, obviously a very different structure between hybrid scheduling, remote scheduling, and that we're up to about 454 students that primarily engage in school through remote means. That's a third of our population. That's up. I think when we first were here at the beginning of the school year, that number was at around 200, 225. So we've doubled that number in the past few months. The next slide, in looking at data that we wanted to show tonight, looking at where, Peabody High School currently ranks. Peabody is the 25th largest city based on population in the state. And looking at our school, with no MCAS last year, we've primarily used that metric and looking at accountability, looking at where the school stands. I pulled this information and this data from the DESE DART tool, which is the District Analysis and Review tool. And it gives us some interesting numbers to look at because it compares us to like districts per, school enrollment, total enrollment, special populations. And in looking at what we'll talk about tonight is where the school needs to start to move to, looking at students that are meeting or exceeding expectations on the grade 10 2019 MCAS, we're starting to see some lags. And I think that's certainly an area where we want to look at where we have instruction and course offerings and rigor in the areas of math and English, and making sure that we're looking at all of our offerings, looking at our schedule, looking at our students who are enrolling in advanced rigorous coursework, and making sure that we're removing any barriers to that advanced coursework for other populations. So this is something that we definitely want to continue to take a look at and where we stand in relation to comparable districts. So looking at the celebrations and focus areas, we took a hard look at the NEASC report and the special progress report that they sent us. We engaged in some work with our department heads and our teacher leaders, looking at our areas of celebration and focus and where they aligned. A couple of areas to point out for celebrations is that we have an advisory program this year, and the advisory program is going to be important moving forward with the craziness of what is happening with where we are with pandemic and making sure that kids are connected. All of our students are enrolled in an advisory, whether they're remote or whether in person, and making sure they have a vested, making sure that they have an adult that has a vested interest in their success. We continue to celebrate our PLC time, our professional learning communities, where teachers can engage in looking at data, looking at student work, looking at adult work, making sure that we have that time to allow them to continue to make tweaks and changes on implementing our curriculum. I think the biggest thing is we opened school. We've been in school for 8 weeks. We are I think we are one of the only schools of our size, especially out of the Northeast Conference, that's been in person school since September 16th. It's something to be celebrated. We gave kids choice, we gave families choice, but again, we've been in school when others have not, so that's something to be celebrated. We just recently had approval from DESE on our protective services program, and a big shout out to the CTE staff, on getting that through. That's a lot of work. Again, another celebration, that we have to look at this year. And again, the teacher-led curriculum development over the summer, again, making sure we promote teacher leadership, teachers working on these pieces, and our vision of the graduate are all areas that we wanted to highlight for the committee and for those looking on at home today. Getting to our focus areas, and this is what the data was showing us, this is what the NEASC report is showing. We really need to take a look at the climate and culture of the building. That was something that came out of the NEASC report first and foremost. We'll talk a little bit about some of the action steps we'll need to take about doing the climate survey and making sure that we understand how the building feels and operates. Growth mindset is another one. We talk about growth mindset. It's one of those buzz areas, buzzwords, buzz terminology that people throw around. But it's certainly something that, again, we talked about the last time is getting away from that, that we've always done it this way. I think looking at the data, we need to look at what we may have been doing, may have been okay for the times, but making sure that we're up on, the latest teaching, the latest learning, the latest curriculum, and making sure we have that rigor. We want to make sure, we have students that have voice and agency in the building, that they are, that their contributions are authentic, that they have a stake in governing of the school. We just had our a revamped student officers election. We did it all remotely. They videoed speeches, and they were able to share these speeches with their peers. So given the times that we have, we didn't let it take away from what we're trying to do to make school feel as real as possible. So again, we're looking at how we're using that group now, and giving them more purpose and direction and meaning. We always want to increase our teacher leadership. When things are done from the ground up, it's much more likely to take hold. A couple of our big area focus areas in looking at the NEASC report, looking at some early walkthrough, observation, is the area of instruction. We want to make sure that, we have students doing most of the talking, student-centered learning. We're looking, we want to look at collaboration. We want to make sure that we have engaged classrooms. We want to look at the authentic integration of technology and not just the iPads being just a book or paperweight. How are we using that technology to enhance that learning? And one of the biggest areas is the multi-tiered system of supports. There's a lot of students that are on plans. We don't always need plans to be making sure students are supported. And we have the DCAP. We should be looking at how we're accommodating kids in classes. We should be looking at how we are providing those accommodations to remove any barriers and making sure that we're offering all of our kids the supports needed to grow and learn. Getting back to the district's mission of hope, we looked at this as we started to look at our goals for the year around building community and equity and access. And again, taken pretty much from the NEASC report, which it's great when it jives right with what we have as far as what we're seeing in schools. And we really want to take a look at the climate and culture in the building, making sure that all of our stakeholders are representative, that the diversity of the school is celebrated, and that we implement the strategies to increase the ownership in the school, the pride in the school, and making sure we have high expectations for all. We can't talk about that enough. Of raising the expectations high where our students and staff will meet them. I know this is small to see, it's a lot of text here, and I'll just try to summarize what you're looking at. Again, going back to the NEASC report is we really need to take a comprehensive look at the climate and culture of the building. What is the feeling of the building? What is the attitude of the building? How do we behave and operate? What are our norms and our values? Again, getting back to teacher leadership and collaboration. How are we working together to improve, learning and for all? Again, professional development is going to be big. And big with administrators as well, is making sure that when we're doing observations of feedback, that we're giving teachers the strategies and the support for them to continue to grow as educators. Our teachers shifted quickly from classrooms of, 25 and having, what was normal for the last 30 years or so, to shifting quickly with smaller classrooms and teaching multiple courses, the same courses in different mediums. So we want to make sure that we're giving our teachers the feedback to support their growth. We want to make sure our parents, our families, our caregivers, our students are involved in the life of the school. That's going to be where things are difficult. You can't just open the doors and have coffee hour anymore. So how are we going to get families and communities to give the information that we need and participate? Again, looking at how we can be more restorative, making sure that how we hold students accountable, but also give them the opportunity to repair. So if we're looking at grades, making sure that we're not, that we're allowing kids to recover when grades are low. How are we throwing them the lifeline? If it's around student behavior, how are we, meeting with the students, and how are we making sure that they learn, but also have the opportunity to not, to grow, and making sure that mistakes they make early on are not lifelong lessons that continue to take away from their growth. And again, we want to make sure, going back to looking at our data, that we're communicating through culturally proficient means, and making sure that all of our families can participate. Whether that's through apps like Talking Points of communicating with families at home, making sure that all of our documents that we send are translated in multiple languages. And then our student learning goal, which ties back to some of the areas that we already spoke about, with getting back to making sure that our students have access to rigorous and relevant coursework and appropriate services. We want to make sure that our students are continuing to grow, that they're taking AP classes, that our grade 9 students are passing at a high rate, and making sure that our EL students are getting the rigorous coursework to show growth on their access scores. Again, going back to that slide I showed about using the DART tool, we really have to look at all of our existing structures, taking all the data that we have, whether it's through NEASC, whether it's through the early warning indicator system, access, AP, all those pieces, to evaluate everything that we do. We talk a lot about why are we doing this? Why do we continue to do this? And really getting down to, is this what's best for kids? If it's not, how do we change it? And if it's something that needs to go, we'll take a look at that. But really getting through, what do we need to continue to grow and making sure that we're on that path of continuous change. So, again, we have a teacher-led advisory program. We have a staff of teachers that have taken on this task. We gave them some direction, we gave them some resources. I had the ability to visit a number of advisories since we started it. And it's great to see students and teachers interacting without the curriculum in the way. It's great watching teachers trying to mentor students and try to guide them where, hey, I see you're having trouble in this class. How have you gone about to fix this? And you see a lot of students, they don't, one of the trends is they don't know how to ask for help, or they don't know how to self-advocate. So it's been certainly something that is very early on. It's starting to take hold, and I'm looking forward to see where the teachers, take this. Eventually, I'd like to see a student or two join that advisory program and drive it around, what the students' needs are. It's been a great opportunity for us to do some of these things that we don't have space for, like the speeches, getting through doing student surveys, or getting the seniors to get their T-shirts out. So it's going to be a place of continuous work, but I'm really happy with the work that teachers have done with that. Making sure that our students and families have clear expectations. That's something that we learned early on from last spring, where families didn't know what their students are supposed to be doing. And when students and families know what the expectations are, it makes those, makes the learning clear. What am I supposed to learn? How can I show it? When do I know I'm going to get there? Our support services, we need to take a hard look at, making sure that our students are supported in the classroom. We have a lot of moving parts at the high school. It's a very big school. We want to make sure that all of our kids have opportunities to grow, and making sure that they're supported in their classrooms. And going back to personalized anytime, anywhere learning, making our learning more student-centered. How can students take advantage of some anytime, anywhere learning? We implemented the digital learning experience this year out of necessity, where we have students who are taking classes, most elective classes through Edgenuity, where they are self-paced. And when they finish that class, they are finished, they earn that credit. So it's something we were trying to teach them the responsibility when they get to college. You're not going to have someone sitting over your shoulder class after class after class. It's helping them start to be more comfortable with digital platforms and self-paced learning. So again, we're trying to move to be more student-centered and hold students accountable and give them opportunities for growth.
All right. Thank you. Any questions from the members?
Thank you, Dr. Padala. Thank you, Mr. Magna.
Thank you.
It was a good presentation. I had a question, if you could tell me, what is the access test or evaluation, ACCESS?
So that's the access test is testing language acquisition. So it's around speaking, reading, writing, listening. That tests our English learners.
Okay.
And we can see growth from year to year.
Very good, thank you. And then on the Edgenuity,
Yes.
do you have any numbers of how many students are taking that now? Or are you tracking it for the year to see if that increases, or what will you be doing with that program?
I don't have an exact figure for
Yeah, I don't
you
want to
now.
put you on the spot right now.
But I can get that information to you.
Okay,
Yeah, so I don't want to venture a guess, but we are tracking. We're at the point now, depending on which classes, we have students that are coming into the district, every day. So we're trying to make sure that we're putting them into any of those classes where they have time to finish them. So we're trying to balance that where, making sure that we're not setting them up where they're not going to have time.
right.
And then every class is different. Some classes are year-long classes, some are semester classes, but we are monitoring that. We have 2 staff members. We actually were able to move some classes around for one teacher and freed up some classes where she is now taking that on as part of her work.
Okay, so that's something you're going to have different numbers all the way through the year, actually?
Yes, so as kids finish courses,
Yeah.
they'll be done with that course.
Right, they move in and
So
out, yeah.
It should be a very flexible number.
And it's a separate number from the Learning Academy, right?
Yes,
Okay, good, thank you.
we're using it very differently.
Very good. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Hockman?
Thank you. Mr. Haas, Mr. Magno, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
A couple of maybe observations, maybe they form into questions, I don't know. Mr. Magno, you indicated that the last time, the difference in the fully remote students from the last time you were here till tonight is 100%.
Yep.
I think the last time you were here, when we were talking about having the high school go hybrid with the rest of the district as opposed to wholly remote.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And while I'll acknowledge the hard work that you and your staff and administrators and teachers are exhibiting on a daily basis, it's extremely difficult what you're doing. I understand that and appreciate it. But that being said, I have to believe that the reason that you have, it looks like close to 40%, maybe a little over 40% of the high school students, excuse me, 30, I'm sorry, which is about 50% higher than the average in the district, being wholly remote, is because of the lack of contact that students have with teachers and their classroom study due to the hybrid model that we put together in the high school. So it's just a little bit of commentary. I don't hold, it's not criticism for you or your team at all, but I'd like to see perhaps increased introduction of students with increased hours going on at the high school now that we've kind of see that schools aren't the vector for the transmission of the virus. And it'll lead into my second point, which is the culture. You talked about the culture. You talked about making students comfortable in the classroom. And again, you've only been there a few months. I mean, this isn't a reflection on you or the quality work that you do, but I continue to hear that one area where students continue to be uncomfortable is in their ideology, and that there's a culture that takes place at the high school, particularly among the teaching staff, that makes students who have a different political or philosophical ideology than they do uncomfortable. And it's expressed with signs around the building, signs in classrooms, and things along those lines. And I realize that that's a touchy subject. If you focus that subject matter in any way other than what is best for the student. So those are just a few comments. And again, believe me, and take this to heart, it's not criticism of you. You are in your infancy there at the high school. I believe you're working very, very hard, and most of your staff members are as well. I'd just like to see perhaps improvement in those two areas.
Thank you.
Mr. Arnottis?
Thank you, Mr. Magno, Mr. Haas, for being here. Leapfrogging off that a bit, I'm just curious how, since we have been in for a number of weeks, you've seen folks adapt and get used to this unique schedule that we have now. I'm curious what you're seeing in the building and how that's going.
Some of the things that we've seen, that we've become much more accustomed to wearing masks for longer periods of time. When we first were here, we were unsure of what that was going to look like. We had this psychological, fear about everybody returning to a building. What's going to happen? We had, a mask break built into part of the day. We were able to recover that time. We listened to the students, we listened to the staff. The kids wanted to roll right through, and we were able to add more time into instructional time, which was great. I mean, I've been very impressed with the students. I've been very impressed with how they adapt. I've been very impressed with their behavior. I've been very impressed with the way the staff is working, with trying to completely change what we're doing. And looking at the numbers, we can look further into, why students are choosing remote options. There's no one answer. There's a variety of reasons. We've heard from families, and we could certainly dig deeper into, why students are electing to engage remotely. We do have, again, we have areas like anybody. We continue to assess what we're doing, and we'll continue to make any tweaks and changes, as they come up. But the building runs very well. Our logistics, our protocols, have been spot on. We've kept everybody, we've kept people safe. When we had to, when we had the need for close contact, we're not having to put students out as a result of the classroom setting. It's always the extra pieces, whether it's buses or sports or things like that. But the building runs well. We've had several school systems talk to us about our schedule, about our protocols. We've had people visit and look at what we do, because feel like old pros at this now from being in school for so long. We have the other NE schools that are starting to put kids into buildings. We're not scared of, we have people are getting sick of hearing my voice about when I have to send a call home that we've had another, case of COVID-19. But our protocols are quick. We establish, close contact and quickly with DPH. Our teachers are great at making sure that the rules and protocols are adhered to. And we be able to, to really keep people in school without having to go backwards. I feel like if we ever had to go backwards, we may not get people back in.
Well, it's great to hear. I'm glad it's been successful as we've worked our way through this. And I agree. I'm sure there's, many different reasons where we could dig into those numbers.
Yep.
I mean, I almost look at it as, a 17 or 18-year-old is more self-sufficient than a 7th grader or a kindergartner. And, if they had concerns, that may have been the reasoning to choose remote. I don't know, but there could be many different reasons for that. And then my second question to you guys, and this is probably more difficult to give an answer, but I'm just curious, because we talk a lot about mental health. I'm curious how you've seen that with the high school population and the staff, for that matter, as we've been going through this. I know we talk about that often, and I'm just curious if you've seen anything with that, how it's been, how you guys have been adapting to maybe an increase in, mental health conversations in the building. I know we have that health center. I'm a big fan of theirs, so I'm just curious what you're seeing on the ground there, if anything.
So I think one of the things that we did early on is we knew that we were going to have students and staff that were, that this was going to be difficult for. And knowing that students would be in school on alternating days, and making sure that they develop relationships with people. School is a lot about relationships. It's one of the most important things that, that we can do in school is leverage, is develop those relationships and leverage them. Having that advisory block on Thursdays and Fridays and having some close connections. So if you look at, I have a third of the students in the building at any given time. Those advisories are really small. So, those were probably, if I had every kid in the building, they're probably 12 to 14 to begin with. Now you take a third of that, where you have an adult with 3 or 4 or 5 students for 45 minutes. So I feel that structure has allowed our kids to have open and honest conversations with adults where they could be more open, where you don't have to worry about, I can't talk about this because we have to do math now, we have to do science now. And it just shows the importance of the advisory structure, regardless of COVID-19 or pandemic. So that has been a tool being, proactive in addressing those pieces. What we don't know is what we don't know. Where kids are really, struggling at times. It's tough to do some of that outreach. Kids are good at not returning emails. And we have to find better ways to communicate with them. Family, we've had a lot of conversations with families that have reached out. We were able to start, we have a new program that just started. Shout out to Kevin Canty and his crew at the community high school with the CARES program, where we have students that, unfortunately may need to be hospitalized, and having a step-down program when they come back to school to support them in their learning. Even our remote students have an advisory once a week, and that's the biggest, one of the biggest pieces of making sure that we had equity across the board in everything we did. And that was the reason why we chose that schedule, is we have equity for anybody who wanted to engage in their learning, whatever they wanted to choose. So, having that, advisory block to be there, sometimes we have plans for advisory, we have to shift. Something is that's important, let's address this. So as we start to be more comfortable, how are we having conversations around, social issues, around what's going on, in the country, around, being more anti-racist. So, it's a great opportunity to have that structure and making sure that we maximize it, maximize and utilize it to its efficiency.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Mr. Olympia?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you both for the presentation. It's a great presentation. Just a couple of quick questions, actually, expanding upon Mr. Arnottis' question. The health center, Have students had the ability to visit the health center on a regular basis or as much as?
So, yeah, so the beauty of the health center is the privacy.
Yep,
So they do have access to it, and it's, we actually work with the health center this year to making sure some of our high needs community are getting their flu shots. But, you know, that's something that the students do have access to, they still have access to. We don't always know who's going there because of, you know,
but have
they
you,
do have access, yes.
have you gotten feedback, you know, that we are seeing, you know, at least a decent amount of children and?
I don't have the specifics, but I can certainly get that.
Okay, and then how about access to like guidance counselors? The students seeing their guidance counselors in person?
So the students have access to the guidance counselors, but we've kind of made some changes that regardless of COVID and pandemic, of not having kids just being out of class. And that's what we really wanted to focus on. So we have a system where they have to make an appointment, they'll meet with their guidance counselor. Guidance counselors have done a great job of utilizing some of our flex time, where they're having, you know, info sessions with large groups of kids. They, you know, having info sessions around, you know, what has to happen for seniors, you know, what has to happen for AP testing. So they're being creative around how they use their time. So if we need to get, you know, rather than have the same conversation 16 different times, we could have one conversation with a large group of kids.
Okay.
Like that's been some of the tricky parts of, we used to do, you know, all these assemblies.
Right.
And
That's right.
again, you know, someone who's spoken in front of assemblies, how many people are actually truly listening? So you're speaking, but who's listening? So having the advisory block where we can video some of these conversations and these speeches, and the kids can watch it in their advisory with a teacher and 4 other people. So we have them more captive.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Amico?
Thank you. Mr. Magno, Mr. House, thank you very much. Being a new principal in a comprehensive high school during regular times is a challenge, never mind what we're in right now, so thank you very much for all your hard work, both of you. And we should be celebrating what we're doing, because you're right, Mr. Magno, we are probably the largest school in Eastern Mass that is doing what we're doing for the last 8 weeks. And you know, I do hope DESE and the State House and Governor Baker's office are paying attention, because on a daily basis we see how, and we hear from them how they want schools to open up and get more students in buildings, and we've been doing it for 8 weeks. So hopefully they really take notice. I know they have. I've heard. I know they have, and hopefully we become a model for the next, you know, and hopefully we get this all under control. So I just wanted to applaud you for that. So your ability, Mr. Magno, with your special ed background, to really get this year off to a great start is showing. We have a lot of ELL students, and we're growing. Our demographics are changing in the city. We have special ed students who need special instruction, and with Mr. Haas's help and your team, I know that we're going to move forward in those subgroups, and thank you for outlining that in your presentation. I had one more thing, and I drew a blank. So I just wanted to thank the two of you. I want to thank your staff and the teachers. This is hard. I'm doing it. I know my colleagues are doing it back in Revere. This is very, very difficult, and I just applaud educators, from the principals, the administration, teachers, staff, custodians, anyone in that building, because it's very difficult. And we're providing a really solid education. We're taking care of a lot of students. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McBell. The staff certainly is loving to hear that right now.
Ms. Griffin-Dunn?
Thanks, Dr. Vidala. I have one other thing that I wanted to tell you. Throughout all of our questioning and throughout your presentation, one of the things I really wanted to thank you for was, and I said it once before, that the plan you came forward with for this year was just amazing, because you were able to integrate the changes we had talked about pre-COVID, and being able to do those things on a regular school year would have been huge. And now you've done it in a pandemic on computers, and it's fascinating to see it from, you know, this distance. But it's so encouraging, and it is so rewarding to hear that you've talked throughout. And Dr. Vidala, you do this a lot, and I'm really glad about it. You talk about equity. You bring everything back to equity. whether it's, the courses we're providing, how we're supporting the students, what we're doing to help the families, you come back to that. And that is really very, very important, and I just want you to know it's noted and appreciated, and I know it's going to help all of the students in a good day, but right now, it's even more helpful because of what's going on. And the fact that you're looking at, the mental health of the students, that again is part of your analysis. Those are things that, yes, we would be looking at, but now it's such a huge piece of everything you're doing. It's a whole new layer, or maybe a deeper layer. I don't know what you'd say, but you're doing it, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We still got a lot of work to do, so we'll celebrate the successes now and take them and making sure that we continue to, look at everything and grow.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Magno. Mr. Haas, I want to commend you on the work that you're doing and leading the way in the Northeast Conference and for high schools around us. I know that there are several high schools that have reached out regarding what you're doing and how you're doing it, and I've had superintendents reach out to me saying, how is your high school in person, and can we get a copy of your schedule, and can you talk us through the do's and don'ts? So I just appreciate, you guys leading the way, and I commend you on that, and keep up the good work.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ms. Orfanos from the Center School. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So also, I will start with the demographic data of Center School. So you can see that Center School, our demographics, we have some challenges that we are working hard to meet. We have over 51% of our students rate in the high needs category. Economically disadvantaged students, also that number, the percentage continues to grow. Almost 38% of our students fall into that category. That's such a change from where I was 8 years ago as a new principal at Center School. English language learners, you can see our percentage, 16% of our students, and that number, continues to steadily grow at Center School. And it's a very important population of students that we're focused on. And, within that percentage, we do have a mix of kids who are English as a second language and then might actually have some special education needs, but our percentage is rather low. We're working really hard with the IST process at our school. My assistant principal, Sarah Almeida, has really taken charge of that process. And we've worked very hard to keep our numbers low and make sure that we're also not over-identifying English language learners as special education. So that's an important factor here. Enrollment data. As you know, Center School's enrollment has continued to grow over the years. When I arrived there about 8 years ago, we were in the mid-300s. We are hovering steadily at 403 this year. However, look up at our kindergarten enrollment, that's 67 students. We were projected to stay around 97 kindergartners. High number of families had to choose child care, private facilities, rather than come the half-day model. I'm sorry, my mask is... So that number would have been around 97, if not for this model. A lot of parents, just their work or their employment needs, they needed guaranteed full-time child care, not the half-day model. As you can see, we also have our numbers. We have a higher demographic in kindergarten through second grade, so our classrooms are larger sizes in the early childhood population. Our numbers are a little lower, though with the hybrid model where we have classrooms of 11 or 12 students. So that, I think the teachers are really enjoying the smaller groups. of instruction. We also, though, had a very high number at Center School for various reasons, medical reasons, parents, concerns of a request for remote. And due to that fact, we also have the demographic of each grade level. Center School has one teacher who serves as a remote teacher, not only for our school, but for the district. So although our number is 403, we are serving about 50 other elementary students from all over the city of Peabody. So it's been a pleasure to serve as a partner with my colleagues in serving the kids of Peabody who, for whatever reason, have to go remote. And I'm very proud of my staff, the job they're doing. They're doing a high-quality job. And that celebration, Central School, the culture continues to be something that we're very proud of. Our PTO has just continued to work despite the challenges of this epidemic to make sure that we have positive events. One of the things that they just secured today is last year we were supposed to have Plymouth State, the Tigers program, the anti-bullying program that I know some of my colleagues have used in the past. They secured that on those Wednesday remote days, we're going to be doing some kind of hybrid version of an asynchronous anti-bullying program that my guidance counselor will help lead on the Wednesday remote days. So we're excited about that, and the PTO really supported all of that and funded that. We have a very collaborative relationship with Endicott College. I know that the district, we have fellows. I also have 4 student teachers working in my early childhood classrooms this year who have been incredible. Just the quality of students that are working with is great. And we're also taking on about 6 foundations of literacy students who will just be doing a practicum with us. They'll be doing it virtually, but they'll be working with my reading teacher and a couple of the remote teachers so they can do breakout rooms. And as you'll see in my demographics coming up, we need a lot of support in reading. So that's where we're working creatively. And then June 2020, we've been working hard with the Department of Transportation, and we got an honorable mention from the Department of Transportation for some of our efforts to improve our traffic safety, so we're celebrating that. Remote learning, I'm just so proud of my staff. They're working hard to come up with innovative ways to engage the students as they work from home. That's not as easy for every student, and we've also worked in the last couple of weeks to transition some kids who have been remote learners back to school. The families have said it's not working, and we've worked hard to get the kids back in. And again, we have our teachers who are providing that service. Focus areas, again, the multi-tiered system of support, the MTSS, that's a big part of our school goal. We want to make sure that we reach all students and that there is equity across the board. I'm going to share a little bit about our STAR student approach later on in my presentation. Curriculum resources, increased use of ELA and math data through the STAR assessment and the Renaissance suite of intervention resources that we can use with the students. I'm very excited. We've been waiting a long time to have this level of math assessment and analysis to track student progress and ensure that they will be making the level of progress that they need to. And then making sure that we're aligning our online resources to maximize teaching and learning. And again, there's our word that I think is common, and so exciting to have that common words across the district and focus of equity. We really want to make sure that we're personalizing our learning for our students. And this year, in every year, but especially because our demographics of ESL families has increased, we really want to increase the amount of engagement that we have in families, make them feel welcome, make sure we have all our documents fully translated. We have come so far in that, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I'm very excited to say today we started a cohort C where we brought in over 20 students who are ESL high need students, and they're in school now 4 days a week. So we got very creative with kind of a pod, and I sent some pictures today. We're just so excited to see the kids here at school, and it meant a lot to the families. The other reason we need to do this is, again, the STAR reading assessment. We always had that, but in the past, we've really looked at more district measures. And so, yes, when you look at the district measures, the kids look pretty good. And then what happens is you get the MCAS results and say, why is Johnny only, partially meeting the standard? He looked great in class according to our data. So we're really focused on using the measurement of how they would perform on the MCAS. And that's the beauty of the STAR assessment. It can give us that prediction. So given the 8 months of absence, given the, some kids doing a lot of work at home during the closure and some kids not opening a book, we've got some demographics that we're concerned about. So 33% of our students, they're just not hitting that literacy proficiency rate for a varying number of reasons. And again, how we would really want to start is greater than 50% of the students would be able to reach that state benchmark at the start of the year. Math, even more concerning, 23% proficiency rate. A little mini celebration is we were pretty close to benchmark for the STAR early literacy assessment. So that's a positive starting point of 47.4%. So I had to find some hope as I was looking at this data here. So again, just gave myself a little boost about accepting that this is where we are, and really, we have to look beyond the struggle, and the victory is just ahead. And I really do feel like we're being provided a lot of support from central office and school committee and my colleagues to do this. I think we can. So, and I really do want to celebrate, there are students that, it's a smaller percentage, but 8 months away, that they are still meeting and exceeding the benchmarks. It's not quite the percentages I'd like to see right now, but it's there. So that's why I put relative strengths in there. Again, the K and 1, we had, for the student growth percentile, we were actually above hitting the 77.3% for the early literacy rate, so we were excited about that. Again, our early childhood grades, the percentages are better for meeting and exceeding the state benchmark, and what's concerning is when we get into the MCAS grades, 3, 4, and 5, we're getting in the 30 to 20% of students who are meeting. So we want to see that go way up, and we have a plan. Again, areas of, for math, again, very small, I mean, in the 20 percentile for the math, for meeting and exceeding. And that is a change. We've never been glowing, but that's a real dip for us in both areas. So we want to really increase these percentages. When we dug a little deeper, it was kids who have some special needs, who are ESL students, or they were also students that we have the data of a low level of participation last spring during the closure. So we are hopeful, and I think that having a very common driven focus as a district is how we're going to improve, and I'm very excited about that. So if you look at the next slide, our goals, my teachers' goals, my goals are very aligned with the district goals. So we want to make sure that we can try to, by June, do some amazing work and hard work for that about 80% of our students will meet or exceed the state benchmark on the STAR reading and math. That's going to be our indicator right now. We can't compare to MCAS from next year, and really show some growth. Our key actions. So we've analyzed the data, and now we have these small intervention groups for targeted math and reading intervention. We're using our Title I tutor. We're using our reading specialist. We're using our Endicott fellow. We've put together these creative cohort C groups. And then we're also working on developing more focus on Tier 1 instruction. What can we do in the class? And so that's where we're using the Renaissance Suite, we're using the Mayon, the Accelerated Reader, the Freckle. The district was able to get ST Math, which is another intervention resource, and my Endicott Fellow happens to be quite fluent in using that. So she's become my leader in the school building with helping us with that. And then we have our newest version of Math and Focus as well. So trying to use every tool we can to get the students where they need to be. And then again, making sure that we are targeting these high needs populations and using the data to constantly analyze where are we going and what we need to change. And then as far as, as you can see, that kind of our vision of hope, when we broke it down, that we are, again, always using data to analyze student progress and change instruction as needed, making sure that we have the multi-tiered system of support for students, so whether they're getting the support in the classroom or additional interventions, additional computer programs, working with families, and also just making sure that the instruction is personalized, so it's not a classroom lecture. What works for one student might not work for another student. And then making sure that we're also, with the social emotional learning, using the MTSS rubric and making sure that we're really covering all the bases. And then for our professional practice goal for building the community, again, we want to implement that multi-tiered student support systems. And we really want to focus on teaching the children the do's, not the don'ts. So not saying don't bully. We're teaching them expected behavior. We're teaching them how to be a center school star. We're teaching them how to be kind, how to express and self-advocate. All of those important components that I think really tie into, when they get to the high school level, the vision of the graduate, that they can meet those standards. But we've got to start at a early childhood level. So again, those action steps. We've got a leadership team now that is just starting to meet. We started in the spring with some work we did with UConn and identified, you know what? Are we doing some of these things? Yes, we are, but are we doing it in the school-wide common language way? No. So that's where we started. And we are now outlining the steps. We're going to be sending out a survey to our entire school community and making sure everyone has a voice in that. We're doing on Wednesdays some virtual all-school meetings and systematically teaching the students all of the steps of how to be a center school star. And then just also nurturing partnerships with community-based social service agencies. We have great relationships with counseling and mental health agencies, helping families get those telehealth appointments now. The grant we got through the city last year has been incredible for students of center school, and just making sure that kids are behavior. Again, teaching the kids all how to be a center school star, and my guidance counselor on remote Wednesdays is giving shout outs to students and recognizing kids for these actions. And continuing our community partnerships. One of the things that we've had a delay in doing, but our friends at the Rotary Club are going to be working with us with putting positive affirmations in our bathrooms. If you've been in center school, the bathrooms are rather old, so we thought that would be a positive place to have some encouraging words for our students, but we're going to have the students work with the guidance counselor and the Rotary Club to really make that space their own. So we're going to get that done this year, hopefully. And then also making sure that we're going to see a 10% increase in school and family communications by the end of the year. And that's direct alignment with the strategic plan in the district. That was one of the pieces I worked on. So we want to continue to get that. And again, focusing on our families who might not be as engaged and making sure everything's interpreted. So this is kind of where I'm kind of ending this off. So if you want to be a center school star, you're going to be able to demonstrate self-control, you're going to demonstrate thinking of others, acting responsibly, and being respectful. So we're just going to focus and target that for this year as kind of the foundation of the vision of the graduate. That's what we're doing on our mini center school level.
Thank you. Any questions from the members? Mr. Amico?
Sure, thank you. Mr. Alfanos, thank you for being here. As a former parent of the center school, I've seen that before, and thank you so much. I just want to, the best compliment and the biggest compliment I can give you is you're a mom to about 400 students, and you're a big sister to that whole staff over there, and it's a great staff. So I just want to thank you and commend you for all your hard work in the past and now and in the future. So thank you so much.
Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, quickly, I'm also a center school parent. First time I haven't had a child there since 2007. I miss you. I miss your staff, I miss your building. Thank you for the really candid and frank description of what's going on with your students. You're not alone.
Yeah.
I suspect that that's happening not only all over the district, but all over the state, all over the country, all over the world. Teachers in front of students matter. Teachers matter an awful lot. Pre-pandemic, we have a great educational system. We're #1 in the country for a reason, and it's because of the quality of teachers that we have in the state, in the city, and in your school in particular. I'm glad to hear that we're reintroducing some more students who have higher needs with more frequency. I hope that we can continue to do that. I think that's really what's going to bridge that gap. And if we don't, I'm afraid that the gap, and you've identified, you have a high level of high need students. I know you do. I've lived there. I've been there for 13 years. You have a high level of economically disadvantaged students. If we don't get more kids in front of more teachers more frequently, the gap in education is going to continue to widen, and it's going to be harder and harder to bridge that gap. So I commend you and your staff for what you're doing. Keep up the good work, and maybe I'll try to stop by more frequently.
Mr. Olympia?
Yeah. Thank you. Actually, Mr. Hockman is like he was inside my head. He took pretty much what I was going to say to you, and really thank you to you and your staff for all that you've done. This presentation, I had like a range of emotions. When you said, we brought back more students from cohort C, I got the goosebumps. And I know all too well about cohort C. But then the very next slide, I saw the benchmarks and my heart sank a little bit. And I just pray to God that those gaps don't continue to grow, because it really breaks my heart, breaks, I'm sure, everyone else's heart here as well. But what gives me comfort is that I know that you and your staff and the teachers in that building will try their very best to get the kids back up to speed, and certainly push to have more students in the classroom. So thank you.
Ms. Griffin-Dunn?
Thanks, Dr. Padala. Thank you, Mrs. Alfanos. This was really very interesting. I have a question. When you do the STAR test, when was that, I guess I don't need them at the moment, when was that given? Was that like the second week of school?
So we did it between, it depended, because in some cases we had to make sure we had access to enough technology, because we had some kids who had the computers and didn't have them. So between the end of September to like the 20th of October.
Okay. All right. I know it's scary to see those numbers, especially for all of you.
Oh, it was.
But when you think of the trauma that the kids really have suffered, I mean, I'm going to call it trauma. The whole world changed, and their world certainly changed. I know that all year long, you're all going to work to bring those numbers up. I I have great faith in you, and I know you're going to do okay. Those are really, a temperature at the, kind of like at the end of a long road, and it's just a marker for what you're going to build on. So
Children are working so hard in school too. That's the most exciting.
Right.
When I start getting overwhelmed looking at the data, when I walk through the classrooms, I say, no, if it's going to happen, it's going to be because the
they're
kids
learning.
are here with us.
They are. They had to get, they're little kids, they had to get used to coming back to school, whatever that is right now too. So, you know what?
They're doing very well with that too.
Yeah. So thank you. I also want to tell you, this is just a statement. The work you did with the Safe Routes to School was wonderful. I watched on Zoom the award ceremony. Thank you for inviting us to that last spring. But I also wanted you to know your model for the Safe Routes to School. I was speaking with Judy Crocker just today because she's going to come out and speak to the Parent Advisory Board, so I was setting up the meeting with her, and she was thrilled to be coming back to Peabody. It'll all be on Zoom. But we had a great discussion, and she loved working with the center school. And she said, center school got it. They understood, and I agree. And so your ears might have been ringing today, and that was why. But it was all good, and I was very proud of what she said about our elementary school here. So just wanted to give you that.
Thank you.
Mr. Arnott?
Thank you. Mrs. Franos, I just wanted to say thank you so much for being here and the hard work that you and your staff have done as we've gone through this. I thank you so much for that honest presentation. I think it was clearly genuine and, on the nose of what you're seeing in there. And those numbers, I know that you're going over the hill, you're going to get through it, as you've said, and, we're just doing our best to adapt here. I know you guys have certainly had to deal with, us weighing things here, and I do agree that, as soon as we can do things, as safely as they can be. And I think those numbers are just part of the discussion, like any factor that we've looked at here. But I do want to give a big thank you to you and your team, and everyone in this district who's been adapting with this. It's not easy. Normally you guys give 110%, and you're giving, 1,000% at this point. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Excellent job. And I will echo what everyone said about the honest presentation. And I think it's nothing short of courageous by putting out, not sugarcoating, this is where we are, this is what we've all experienced. And when we talk to you in June, you'll be amazed at the work that we've done. So I just want to thank you for that. So thank you very much for your presentation. And next up we have the Burke School with Ms. Peacock and Mrs. Broughton. Welcome.
Thank you. It's funny to know if people can actually hear you behind the mask, but I guess people can. So thank you for having us this evening. We certainly want to be able to talk to you about the Burke School and kind of where we're at and where we're going. We have a great plan ahead of us. I'm happy to have Mrs. Broughton here as assistant principal to participate with me this evening. So I'm actually going to let her start and talk a little bit about our demographics and some things that stand out.
Okay, so just to talk you through the categories, the high needs right now for our school, we're at about 35.8%, so a little lower than the district. Economically disadvantaged, we're at 16.9, which is lower than the district. English language learners at 5.4%. And our special needs population is at 28.8%, which is higher than the district average and the state average. So we do have some programs based out of our building, the language-based program and the Pathways programs, grades 2 through 5. Our enrollment data, we are a little down this year, not many, about 7 kids, but we already have about 6 projected to be joining us in the next 6 weeks, 4 which would be program-based. There's also the Birch Hill Estates being built right now, which we're anticipating that will boost our enrollment as well. We've already gotten a few students from that development over the next couple of years, I'm assuming.
I think one of the other things, if you can just go back to the last slide, for our remote students. So currently we only have 16 students who are currently remote. We have brought back 8 students from our remote population already, and we are currently servicing a third of our population in cohort C. You want to start the celebration?
So celebrations, we have high family participation. We've had high participation on parent orientation, parent conferences, PTO events, PTO meetings. We have strong relationships with family continuity and Leahy behavioral health, which has been helpful, especially at the start of the year. Strong communication between home and school, utilizing the Class Dojo and Aspen. So Class Dojo, every teacher has access to their parents that they can text them, as well as the school as a whole. And also just to add, I think technology in general for our teachers. I mean, they've learned a lot of new online platforms. They've communicated them to the parents and the students, and I think if you asked them in March what they'd be able to accomplish now on technology, they would have never believed it. So I do think our staff is doing a great job with the technology piece and the online learning. For curriculum and instruction, we've had a lot of professional development and implementation of the Haggerty phonemic awareness curriculum, and also some training from Sally Grimes and the hands-on approach. And also the creation of comprehensive assessment systems to provide teachers with tools necessary to drive instruction.
Areas of focus. Certainly equity is a huge focus across the district, but being able to create learning experiences that are accessible and engaging to all students across all learning environments. So we're really, really diving in to make sure that learning is not only accessible in the classroom, but it's also accessible to students who are at home, given the fact that we have so many students that are still in the hybrid model. Curriculum and resources, incorporating additional STAR assessment tools into the Burke assessment system created in 2019 and 2020. So one of the things that the Burke School did as part of our turnaround plan planning with the Department of Ed was they spent a lot of time over the last year and a half, really creating a comprehensive assessment system to make sure we had all of the information we needed. With the STAR assessment training that we've had this fall, it has allowed us to incorporate some additional tools into that. So we really feel like we are able to focus on that, use what we've already developed with the STAR to really create what we feel like will give us the most valuable information to drive our instruction. In that we have sub-assessments, so that when we give an assessment, we find an area that we think that a child may need some additional support in, we're able to dive in a little bit deeper and really determine where to support children most. As you know, teachers have returned to the school year really motivated to teach. It's been an unprecedented break in school. We didn't know how kids were going to come back. I think my colleagues would all say, and for anybody who's walked through the buildings, that students are excited to be there, teachers are excited to be there. Students want nothing more to learn, and teachers want nothing more than to teach. And so I think as we go through the next slides, you're going to see some data that, Ms. Orfornos had done a great job previously starting to paint that picture. But the data that you see is off our STAR assessment data, some DIBELS data that was taken on a point of time and how we would anticipate that students would perform if they were given MCAS now. So we certainly, you will see that we have a ways to go, but we expected, given the unprecedented break, and given our large proportion of students who fall in multiple subgroups, that we would have to do some big growth this year. So I'm going to let Mrs. Broughton talk about the first two.
So as you can see, the overall growth, 39.6% are in that meet-in or exceed-in expectation, with our largest chunk coming in the partially meet-in expectations. In the STAR Math, we have 28.5% in that meet-in or exceed-in range, and our largest chunk again is in the partially meet-in at 45.5%. But again, I feel like it's a snapshot at the time that they came back, but this was given, the end of September. So I just feel like it's one piece, of the big picture. It looks very different going through classes and seeing the kids excited and engaged.
When we look at the STAR Early Literacy assessment that was given to our youngest learners, we saw that 56.3% of the school was coming in at proficiency rate. Obviously, that's not given against the same benchmark, the state benchmark, just because it's more nationally normed. On the right side of the screen, you'll see this is DIBELS data for our K-1 students. So we wanted to make sure that we also have an assessment tool that's really looking at the early phonemic awareness skills, and so DIBELS does that for us. And so this gives us an idea of a composite score that's created by DIBELS, which is an indicator of reading success. And so you can see when you look at our cohort of K-1 students that we have a substantial amount of students that are falling in the red and the yellow, about 65%. And so we really need to focus on those students in those areas that are the basic indicators of literacy success. So we know what those are. Teachers are able to dive into this data. They're able to take it apart. They take it apart by standard. They take it apart by strand. And so that is the work we've been engaging in.
So our areas of relative strength for our students, kindergarten and grade 1, the early literacy, 65% of students meet in or exceed in the benchmark. Grade 2 and ELA with 64% of the students were meet in or exceed in the state benchmark. Grade 3 for math, 40% of the students were meet in or exceed in the state benchmark. And grade 4 for ELA, 34% of the students were meet in state benchmark.
Areas of concern, I think you started to see it, but we have about 53% of students partially meeting and 10% of students not meeting in ELA in grade 3. We have 39% partially meeting and 26% not meeting in grade 4. And you can see this similar pattern in grade 5 with 50% and 24%. So as we get into our MCAS testing grades, we're seeing that those are populations that we need to focus a lot on. I think it's also important to mention, and we'll go into the next slide so you can see other areas of concern, that where we have in grade 2 math, 48% partially meeting and 20% not meeting. In grade 3, we have 37% of students partially meeting and 23% not meeting. In grade 4, 43% partially meeting and 24% not meeting the state benchmark. And in grade 5, the similar story of 50% and 33% not. I think the important thing for us as we take this data and own this data is that we know that we have a large portion of our students who fall in multiple subgroups that require a significant amount of support to meet those goals. So one of our biggest efforts this fall was to bring back as many kids as we could. So really striving to get, like we said, about 30% of our students are back into the building in cohort C, 4 days a week, which are our program-based students, and at each grade level, additional students, because we know that when we look at that bottom group of kids who are not meeting, we need to be able to close the gap, and the only way we can do that is having them face-to-face. So we're really focusing on that. Bringing everything that we do this year really back to the ideas of building community and equity and access.
Okay, so our professional practice goal this year is building a community. So we're hopeful that by June 2021, the Burke School will have developed and implemented school-wide expectations for behaviors, systems for behavioral support, reinforcement of positive behaviors, and systems of behavioral communications for students, families, and staff. This work will be measured by classroom walkthroughs, teacher observations, data collected from positive Tier 1 behaviors, and a reduction of office referrals for unexpected or inappropriate behaviors by 5%.
Key actions. So at the end of last year, we spent some time with University of Connecticut doing some evaluative work around our systems of support in relation to behavior and social emotional climate. And so we created a leadership team as part of that, so continuing to implement the leadership team to focus on the language and expectations of Tier 1 Burke School behaviors. Part of that last year was that the team identified a need for a common set of language, so we developed a ROARS acronym to be used across the building, which is focusing on respect, organization, acceptance, responsibility, and safety. So our teachers have spent the fall already talking with students about what does that look like, what does it feel like, what does it sound like across environments, so that students are talking about that in the variety of settings that they're in. What does it mean when you're at home learning? What does it mean when you're at school learning? What does it mean when you're in the gym? What does it mean, across all environments? We want to expand our system to acknowledge appropriate Tier 1 behaviors. So the Burke School has implemented for years what we call the high fives for Burke School Wall of Pride. So we have the high fives that are in the main office, but students aren't able to see those the way that they've seen those in the past because we just don't have as much movement around the building. So making those things come more to life through presentations that are sent out to students, through announcements in the building to make sure that those students are still recognized and recognized with their classroom teachers as well. We want to outline the steps that should be taken to support Tier 2 and Tier 3 students. One of the things that came out of our work, the evaluative work we did with UConn, was really identifying that administration was really aware of the tiers of support, but making sure that teachers and families were also aware of those supports. And so getting that out to families and also being able to monitor the data in relationship to those decisions. And then being able to elicit support from our stakeholders before finalizing our plan. So sharing it out to the PTO, virtual parent presentations so that parents are seeing what the tiers look like and the support that we're providing at school.
So our benchmarks for this will be the UConn leadership team will present ROA's common behavior expectations to staff and create a virtual presentation to families. Classroom teachers will complete templates to define ROAs with all students K to 5 and include ongoing discussions in their weekly meetings. Monthly recognitions of students receiving high fives for positive behavior acknowledgement. Collection and analyze pre and post data on students earning positive reinforcement and to define behavioral supports and share with staff and stakeholders, including community partners. And this has already started. We've already started this in the classrooms. Teachers have posters up. We've already started some high fives within the classrooms, or paw prints, I should say.
They're all down the hall too. If you come to the Burke, you will see there's paw prints for social distancing. Our student learning goal is that by June of 2021, the Burke School will increase equity and access for all students by demonstrating progress in the areas of curriculum assessment and student support as measured by a minimum increase of 30% in student proficiency in math and ELA data, walkthroughs, and teacher observations. We will continue to implement school-based academic leadership teams. We have an academic leadership team as well as data teams that meet routinely to analyze data. The leadership team really looking at the overarching data of the school and sharing that out to staff in our grade levels, working as individual data teams to identify students and individual needs to ensure that we're implementing instruction that has high impact on students. Given the fact that we are in a hybrid model, we are going to certainly be looking at, and we have already looked at, and are implementing a multi-tiered system of support so that we can make sure we're meeting the needs of the students who we are seeing 4 days a week, the students who are also at home, and across all of our subgroups. The Burke School does have a Burke School turnaround plan that we are responsible for in sharing out, creating for the state each fall. So we submitted that in October. That really has 4 primary goals this year, focused on comprehension, phonemic awareness, access and equity, and data, and using data to inform instruction. So making sure that that document, along with our improvement plan, aligns and is living a document for our staff when implementing the action items, monitoring the benchmarks, and making adjustments based off the data. So we take routine benchmark assessments against that plan as well to make sure that we're on track with that and make adjustments that we need to. Our turnaround plan is based off from our low socioeconomic subgroup, who the majority of those students also fall within our substantially separate programs as well. So we want to make sure that we're making both of these documents go together to be as effective as we can. We will continue the implementation of our updated assessment calendar, which I mentioned previously, action planning for students. So in our data meetings, making sure that for students who are identified in need of an intervention, we have very clear plans for those students of who they are, what the intervention is, and we're able to document how students respond to the instruction or do not, so we can make those adjustments. We'll continue the implementation of the Haggerty Phonemic Awareness Curriculum, and Sally Grimes came and did some substantial training with our staff on how to use manipulatives in conjunction with Haggerty Phonemic Awareness to make sure that we were getting the most effect out of it for students in grades K and 1 and across our special education programs. We'll continue to define our system that supports social emotional learning through student-based action plans, so making sure we have action plans for social emotional learning as well as academics. Make equity and access a part of regular conversations and feedback with teachers in staff meetings, staff updates, action planning, and leadership meetings. We spent a lot of time last year talking about access and what it means for students to be able to access the tasks that we're asking them to complete and what it takes for us to make sure that all kids are accessing it. So there was, for a long time, people talked about differentiation, and that's still important, but we want to make sure that it's access. That's really driving our instruction. We want to utilize the new tools for learning to supplement our curriculum of Tier 1 instruction and enhance student growth. So those tools of MyOn, Freckle, ST Math, early literacy, accelerated reader, we want to use all of those things to be in conjunction with our Tier 1 instruction and provide some additional reinforcement to students as much as we can.
And then the benchmarks would be to utilize the academic leadership team and grade level data meetings to analyze benchmark data for classroom teachers to target instruction. 4 yearly grade level data meetings. The academic leadership team will meet monthly to review data and aggregate the information to staff so that 70% of the students can show proficiency or exceed grade level expectations. And then for student support, we're going to continue targeted intervention based on the redesign of the multi-tiered system of support. Use data to identify students, create action plans, and progress monitor to track their growth and progress with the intervention. And then grade level data meetings will be held in October, which we've already had December, February, and April.
And most importantly, we want to say thank you. We really want to say thank you to our teachers. I know everybody has mentioned that, but they are working tremendously hard. Our students and our families, I know that parents are going above and beyond as well to support their children at home, and we can't thank them enough in working with us as partners to make students as successful as possible. Obviously, thank you to Dr. Vidala and Dr. Lord, Mayor Betancourt, and all of you for your support routinely. And I think a big shout out to our tech department, who has done a tremendous amount to help students access school. So thank you to everybody. Questions?
Mr. Olympio.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you both for comprehensive, detailed, honest assessment. I think that's going to be the theme here tonight, but certainly the community appreciates it. Certainly around the neighborhood, I get a lot of positive feedback, and parents and students really appreciate all the work that both of you are doing, certainly the teachers and your support staff as well. I'm glad to see that you're emphasizing on behavior. That's key during this time. Certainly, I think the students could teach the adults a thing or two at times. And I'm blown away too. 94% of the students are hybrid. It's really something. And a third of those students are cohort C. So you have students in the building, a good chunk of the students in the building. So just thank you, and I appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
Ms. Griffin-Dunn?
Thanks, Dr. Vidala. Thank you, Mrs. Beacott. Thank you, Mrs. Broughton. This was a very good school plan, and all I really want to say is I appreciate the page you have in there with the little tiger that explains it very well, the status of everyone when you did those STAR tests and what the benchmark really meant. It's much more eloquent than what I said when I was speaking with Mrs. Orfanos, but it goes for all of you elementary principals. That's the one. That lays it right out there. If anybody ever wonders about that number, that says it right there. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Miko?
Thank you, Ms. Scott and Ms. Broughton for being here. Appreciate it. Great presentation. To echo what Ms. Dunn and Mr. Olympia said, and with the data, knowing where your students are, being able to have action steps for them, helping your teachers as well with it. again, it's very difficult to look at it right now and say this is where you're at, but you know what you have to do to get them to where they want to be, and you have a great staff and you have great leadership, so I just want to thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Hockman?
Thank you. Doc, if you don't mind going back to the enrollment data slide. Thanks. So, boy, you are the new benchmark. You've created a benchmark here tonight. You're telling me that you have, what is it, about 75 students who are attending school 4 days a week in your building. Phenomenal. I mean, I realize you have one of the smaller populated or lower populated buildings in the city, which probably enables you to do that, but phenomenal. Great job by your staff. Great leadership by the two of you. It's like looking at Spawn and Sane when I'm looking at the two of you, two pitchers for the Ballston Braves. In any event.
You have to be creative.
Yeah,
you have to be creative.
Keep up the great work. It is interesting to see, you know, you are in a portion of the city where there's less economic disadvantage. However, you do absorb some students through some of the special needs programs that you house who suffer from economic disadvantage and other issues. But it's interesting to see that there's still a gap that exists due to the time away from learning.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
That is certainly interesting.
Do we get a Spawn and Sane reference?
We did.
So the reference was Spawn and Sane and then Pray for Rain.
Right, well,
So that was the reference for
the
the.
references, there were two great, I think they're both Hall of Fame pitchers.
Yes.
And then, so I'm looking at two Hall of Fame pitchers is what I'm.
Well done.
I'm not sure. We'll see. Maybe I'll shoot the hoops, but.
Mr. Arnottis?
Just very quickly, I also want to echo, as I've been saying, thank you all for your hard work during this difficult time. I know it hasn't been easy. And it is, you know, certainly reflective that you have, you know, probably more population in your school than some of the others, and it's clearly going well right now, so I think that's a good indication looking down the line, but I want to thank you guys for the work that you guys have done so far. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate all the work that you're doing. And next up, we will have the Carroll School and Mrs. Smith.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So I guess we'll just jump right into it. So this is my 8th year at the Carroll, and I will tell you that my data is not fantastic, but I will tell you about all the wonderful things that my staff is doing to make it fantastic. So we can just look at the demographic data.
Wait me 1 second. For some reason yours is not pulling up.
Would you like me to just go over it myself?
No, it's coming.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. And we're in.
Okay, perfect. There's the beautiful Carroll School. Okay, so as you can see, our demographic data is significantly higher than the district and the state in a lot of places. So our high needs is at 59.1%. Our economically disadvantaged is at 43.4%. Our English language learners numbers, which much like Center School has drastically gone up since I have been at the Carroll, is 17.5%, and our special ed population is 14.3%. So if you look at our numbers compared to last year, very similar. We actually had a very low kindergarten registration. When we went out in March, we had not done our kindergarten registration, so all the way up until, I would say, July, we only had about 50 kindergartners registered. And then, as we normally do, in August, we had a huge spike, so we're about the same as last year. So looking at our numbers, we have 80% of our students are hybrid right now. So we have 562 students. I think actually that just changed because we had another one come back yesterday. So we're at about 563. Only 10% of our students are remote. And I'm actually receiving phone calls almost daily about parents who would like their kids to come back to school. Right now, our classroom numbers are at the max. We have 12 in almost every classroom, so we don't have a lot of flexibility in order to keep the kids 6 feet apart, which the teachers are doing a really great job. Most cohort A and cohort B have about 11 or 12 kids in each classroom. We did bring back about 5 cohort C students in the last 2 weeks, but definitely we would love if any of the diameters change to bring back more kids if we go any smaller than 6 feet. That would be significant for us. So some of our celebrations. We had a great amount of people who offered to be on our school reopening committee. We had teachers, we had support staff, we had parents. They did a great job. Our August and September, we successfully implemented our hybrid plan, brought 443 students, participated in in-person learning weekly. So that's a significant number for us. It's interesting to see on any given day, though, that it's about 220 students. So normally, in my last 8 years at the Carroll, we've had about 500 to 600 kids trying to get in the door on Monday morning, and now it's only about 200. So it makes for a quieter arrival and a quieter dismissal every day. But I would love to see all of them come back. 119 students are successfully learning with the remote learning cohort. 5 of the Carroll school teachers are their remote teachers. We've had enough with our numbers to make K, 2, 3, 4, and 5 actual remote classrooms. So November, still 443 students participating in hybrid learning. More parents are calling. I had 2 call today asking if they could come back. We're trying to figure out the numbers. So once we look at our data, you will see that our focus areas are to increase the use of our ELA and math data to personalize learning, which our teachers have been doing almost every day now. Utilizing the Renaissance learning systems and the Lexia to address the student needs. We've had tons of PD on that. The teachers have been collaborating on what they know and what they're great at. Emily Moore has been fabulous, and so she has come over and worked with some of the teachers on how to look at data and how to drive their instruction. Provide teachers with monthly individual reports, so we're printing those out every week, and we're sitting down with teachers and looking at monthly what we need to do. We need to hire some Tier 2 support staff, so right now, we'll talk about that in a minute. That's one of my biggest concerns, is that I am very low on staff. So I have no reading specialists, no reading tutors, and no math tutors at this point, due to people leaving because of their concerns, with in-person learning. And so they're all posted, and we're waiting for people to apply. But when we look at our data, maybe we can go to the data. So last year, looking at our next generation MCAS, it was fantastic. We were not requiring assistant or interventions, and we made substantial progress towards our targets. And the teachers were all thrilled. And so this year, looking at our STAR data, it's definitely been a lot for us to swallow. We know that with our population, a lot of the kids who have been home from March to June were not involved in much of school. It took us a long time to reach a lot of our students, our ELL population, parents who were working, kids who had to go live with grandparents, kids who didn't have Chromebooks. We dropped off a lot of Chromebooks, kids that didn't have internet. So it's definitely been a struggle. So this is just a snapshot. It's where the kids are now. They've been out of school for a significant amount of time. Now they're back. We look at this and we move on. So as you can see from our reading data, we have about 54% of K are below benchmark, 72 for grade 1, 68 for grade 2, 77 for grade 3, 78 for grade 4, and 71 for grade 5. It's wonderful to see the at and above benchmarks, but we really, really need to get these kids that are below benchmark and haven't had the access up where we need to be. Math is somewhat similar, 46% for K, that's our math and focus growth measure. 83% is the STAR math, the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. 83%, 84, 73, 86, 88. But much like Jackie said, we, well, I guess we'll look at this. We have hope. We have hope. And the teachers, I cannot say enough about my staff because they are working tirelessly. And it's hard to come in every day when you know you're already behind the 8 ball with some of these kids. But to see what's going on in these classrooms, yesterday I was in a first grade class and one of the students This little boy, John, he's so cute, he yelled across to me, Mrs. Smith, I'm giving you an ear hug. Like, they get the protocols, they understand it, they just want to learn. They are so excited. The teachers have been so creative. They've worked so hard with all of our online platforms. But we also need to get the support staff. We've been very lucky that we've always had 2 full-time reading teachers, 3 full-time reading tutors, 19-hour reading tutors, 2 math specialists, and then this year we were adding in math tutors. So we haven't filled any of the math tutors. I have 2 of my ELL teachers right now are teaching remotely from home, and that's very difficult with ELL students because obviously acquiring the language is something you need to do in person, and so they're being creative and they're, again, working as hard as they can, but it's probably not where we need to be as far as in-person learning for these kids. But building a community, we have an awesome community at the Carroll School. You know, as Mr. Magno said, I've had to send out a couple of those emails in the last couple of weeks too, saying that we've had, you know, someone in our community test positive. And all of the emails that I get back from parents are with the praying hands, and I hope everyone's okay. And it's a great place to be. The teachers are excited to have the kids in front of them. The kids are excited to be there. Equity and access is something that we work on all the time at the Carroll. So, but I just want to give a real shout out to my staff because they are working so hard and staying so positive, and that's hard to do every day. So professional practice goal this year is the Carroll School will build a welcoming, collaborative community. I think we already have that, but we're going to improve the effectiveness of 2-way communication as measured by parent attendance at functions and survey data measured with parent satisfaction with school communication. As always, it's difficult for us with our ELL population. We try tirelessly. We still have a Spanish translator that comes in for 2 hours on Wednesdays to help us make phone calls. We have a lot of our community that speaks Portuguese, so we kind of have Portuguese covered, but I'm going to ask for Babbel for Christmas so I can maybe learn how to speak Portuguese and pick up a little. But so our key actions were pre and post parent survey. We're working on getting those out right now. We are going to start to hold monthly parent meetings. We're trying to figure out the logistics of should we do it by grade or because it's a large number of parents. So I think probably our first focus will be on the technology because we're finding that the parents who are reaching out, they're having a hard time with their kids' remote learning day and supporting them. We use Remind 101. It's an app, a method of communication. It's an easy way for me to text and parents can text back if they have questions. So our benchmarks set clear expectations for and provide appropriate support to educators and families regarding regular 2-way cultural proficient communication. Build collaborative relationships between families and the school community, which I think we've done a great job of, but we still need to work harder on that. Improve the effectiveness of communication by utilizing a variety of communication methods. So again, the emails, the newsletters, the Remind 101 to keep parents and caregivers informed. So our student learning goal this year is by utilizing Renaissance learning systems in Lexia, 75% of the students will meet or exceed district benchmarks for our STAR and math and reading scores, which is what you saw. And I think we can do that. And I actually think that because this is right out of the gate, we took it the first couple weeks, the kids were just getting used to walking in a line and always wearing their masks and being 6 feet apart from each other. And how do you raise your hand and how do you go to the bathroom and doing all of the things that just normally come natural to them, that this is our first piece of data and we'll be doing some more analysis in the next couple of weeks, but I can guess that it's already gone up. Their scores have already gone up. There's so much instruction going on right now and good learning. So our key actions, providing an ongoing professional development to staff, including set usage expectations. We've talked to students and staff about that. The things we want to see, how much we want to see them on all these online platforms. Create an assessment calendar to progress monitor, which we do because we're a Title I school, we do that a lot with our reading tutors, our reading specialists and our math specialists. We do have an Endicott fellow, Samantha, who's been fabulous, so she's kind of taken on the role as one of our reading specialists, and she's doing a great job pulling all the data and looking at all the numbers along with my math specialists. We'll administer the STAR reading and math assessments, administer the Lexia placement assessments. The Lexia placement assessment is great for our ELL students, so they're using that to implement a data analysis team, which we actually had started last year, and then we kind of got cut, so we're doing that again this year. And we're going to utilize those data teams to modify and target our instruction. So we do that at least every 2 weeks, just kind of looking at the things that are going on in the classroom, the formative assessments the teachers are doing, as well as our big bulk data that we have from STAR. Look at that, 10 minutes. Any questions? Yes, Mrs. Dunn.
Mrs. Dunn?
One, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Smith. This is a very good plan. You've got everything in place to move forward, and I've already said what I have to about those benchmarks and where we are.
Yep.
I actually want to thank you for something you just said when you talked about those first few weeks of school where you had to teach the kids about, washing hands, 6 feet apart, wearing the masks. You know what, those are details that I hadn't even thought of it. I'm sure most people have not even thought of what you all have to do just to get the kids ready to teach math and reading. And it's amazing, and thank you for doing it.
Oh, sure. It's the teachers, really. They're so incredible, and some of the classes that I go in, they have a hand raiser, and they just, on the remote classes, they have a little fake hand that they raise. I mean, it's amazing how the teachers have adapted and the kids have adapted to all of these new ways of learning.
Yeah.
I was on a kindergarten class this morning, and it was probably about a half an hour math class. And first, the kindergartners, they always interrupt. Does anybody have anything to say? Yes, I do. Does it have anything to do with the book? Well, I just want to tell you that I want to give you a hug so bad right now. And then another little boy at the end said, I just want you to know I love you. And they're so cute. And they were doing math with all their manipulatives at home, and it's amazing. The teachers are truly, truly amazing at the Carroll School. I can't say enough about them.
I agree.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes. Thank you. I feel like, everyone in the district has one hand tied behind their back when they're going through this, and I feel like you have your school has two hands tied behind their back, and maybe even a leg. God bless you all.
Another one, too.
I mean, it's incredible, the work that you are doing and the effort that's being put in, and it's really inspiring, and so it really is. Just a couple of quick questions. How many cohort C students do you have?
So we have 5.
That's it?
That's it. It's all, we don't have any place to put them.
Yeah.
So we don't have any support to
Yeah.
put them anywhere else, and we don't have any classrooms that are larger. Going the 6 feet apart in a classroom only holds 12 students.
Okay. And then how about the attendance in general? Is it about
So
what
the
you would
attendance is very good on
Yeah.
the in-person days.
Okay.
We are definitely still seeing kids struggling at home.
Gotcha.
So some of it is due to internet access, and the IT department has been fabulous helping us get hotspots for kids, and hopefully our new Chromebooks are coming in within the next couple of weeks, and so those have obviously quicker operating systems and kids won't get thrown off. But we are also finding that we have a lot of parents that when the kids are home on remote days, they're going to babysitters, or they're taking care of even younger siblings, 5th graders, so we're losing them during the day if they're not on all day. So the teachers are being very creative. We do have some teachers who think that it's just easier for them to live stream all day.
Yeah.
So they open their computers, they sign on, they do the attendance, they have their mini lessons, but they keep that Google Meet going all day long for kids that have questions, or we do find that when we say to kids, okay, go work on this for an hour and come back, sometimes they're not coming back. So,
God bless. Thank you.
yeah, sure.
Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Smith. You have such a diverse population in your building. You have diversity among your parents. I can't even imagine how difficult remote learning is for a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old whose parents struggle with English and therefore struggle with being able to support the student while they're remotely learning. I hear the disappointment in your voice in terms of the lack of Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports that are present in your building. I share that concern with you. It's real. It's more real, more meaningful due to the needs in your building than maybe other buildings in the city. I agree that you have a wonderful staff, you have a wonderful school culture. Parents are typically engaged in your community. It's really indicative of the hard work that you and your staff have put in to build up those relationships. I will say that you also have one of the top 2 crossing guards in the city, Kathy Vinagro.
Vinagro, yeah.
She's right there with Frank Rossi,
She
who
is
lives.
awesome.
Frank lives in the Carroll School District, but crosses students at the center school. But Kathy's
Yeah.
phenomenal, and and I think that matters. I think
Certainly,
her greeting students as they come across North End Boulevard and into the lower main entrance to your school, and providing them with a smile and support as the day starts does matter. I do, and it reminds me of a conversation I had with Ms. Vinagro recently. One of the things that I'm happy about is the half-day kindergarten hybrid model, because kindergarten students are engaged 4 days a week, and I think that's important for them. But one thing that was brought to my attention is that we don't have crossing guards in the middle day transition. So in other words, we have a crossing guard in the morning when school starts at 8:45, and then we have a crossing guard at 2:45 or 2:40 when school's released. But those kindergarten students who leave school about 11:50 and then arrive at about 12:30 or thereabouts, there are no crossing guards. And maybe that's something we should look at to provide additional resources.
They're all with adults.
Yeah.
An adult
Yeah,
has to
no,
pick
I
them up,
understand that,
yes.
but we realize that some students need assistance, and that's why we have crossing guards, and we just might need to put another tier on crossing guards. I don't think it's something we thought about when we developed the hybrid model for kindergartners. Anyway.
And I will say, even with Kathy, and Rick is with Kathy, Officer Rick Cochran, and he's fabulous. And so, same thing, to have an officer and a crossing guard who are greeting you every morning. A lot of the kids they know by name, welcome to school. It's a great feeling every morning to be there.
Mr. Miko?
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Thanks for being here. We've had plenty of conversations over the years, and I can certainly empathize with you and your staff. A lot of our challenging students, the challenges are great, but the rewards are even greater. So, and you know that. You've had so many students where they've probably come to our city years ago and maybe couldn't speak a lick of English, and then they've gone on to do great things. So it's just a testament to what you do and what your staff does. But just want to really say thank you for all you do, because especially during this time, these kids really need someone to look up to. And I know your kids, and I call them your kids because they are. They love you, and I hear it all the time. So
thank you.
Thank you.
I love all of them and their
do.
parents.
I know you do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Smith.
Sure. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
And next up, we have the McCarthy School, Mrs. Doley.
I'm just going to start with some of the demographics. So the McCarthy School is very different than a lot of the other elementary schools in that we also have the integrated preschool. So this year we have sort of taken the role of a preschool director, and that has fallen upon myself and Carla Chioda, the special ed director. So just sort of keep in mind when we talk about the McCarthy School, we are one, and when we say that, we also mean that the preschool has really become part of the McCarthy School. And so when you look at our demographics, they are pre-K to 5. If you start to break them out a little bit, it's really interesting. Our high needs shows 50%, but our preschool is also 50% special education. This year it's more than 50% special education. So our high needs are really also that. But if you look at our economically disadvantaged, it's 29%, but if we looked at that K through 5, it's actually 49% because it's a tuition preschool. So many of the families that are coming for preschool are the other 50% paying. So that kind of changes some of our demographics just a little bit. We are on the smaller side of our ELL population, but we do have a pretty high need at our school, especially if you kind of wander through the back wing where the preschool is. This year we have 3 medically fragile preschoolers who are in wheelchairs, and we have a 4th one who should be starting as soon as the IEP is signed. So it's a very busy place with a lot of needs. Our enrollment in preschool is down. It's down about 50 students, and that is because we had to change our structure. With going to the cohort model, that really impacted preschool. And so we're down about 50 preschool students, but if you also look at our numbers, we gained quite a number of students because as they turn 3, they keep getting tested and they keep entering. So I would imagine, we already have 3 students starting next week. We'll have some more students starting. Our preschool numbers will go up. Our remote numbers are fairly high. We have 71 students who are remote. And then we were able to, because of the number of remote students, also bring in more cohort C students. So about 31% of our population is in 4 days a week. And the cohort C preschool students, those are 14 students that are full day, where most of our preschool students are half day. So for some celebrations, we have a very strong school community. We have an amazing staff that you ask for anything and 5 people volunteer. We have eager and excited students, and they are just so happy to be back at school. And we have very supportive families and very supportive parents. And so that gives us a really strong base for our school. We also have a strong school culture. We have a professional collaboration. It's amazing how the teachers really work together. There's a lot of new things on the table this year, and they just jump in with 2 feet. We have started virtual assemblies where we're really launching our school expectations and our core values, and the kids absolutely love it, and I think the teachers have fun too. And social emotional learning is definitely a strength, but still in the focus area, it's something that we want to grow. So our focus areas, you'll see our data, it's very similar to everybody else. So we really have a high emphasis on early literacy. This year, our preschool is launching foundations, so we are starting with that. I actually have a classroom teacher who's making a video to model it for them. I've had my reading specialist do some training with them. So it's really been a school effort in supporting them and learning that process. We also know for our early readers, there's a lot of deficits. And so we have used a lot of different assessments. Phonemic awareness is a huge gap. So we have implemented a phonemic awareness program in kindergarten and 1st grade this year that teachers again jumped in with 2 feet. Our curriculum resources, the Math and Focus, the Renaissance tools. We also were able to get Lexia, and the other focus area is our school culture. We have a wonderful social emotional learning and school culture, but we're finding with remote and hybrid that we just need more of an emphasis just to support students and continue to build relationships. So our data looks very much like everybody else. I think you can look at kindergarten, and I think to me kindergarten is very telling. They haven't had teachers yet. So when you look at our kindergartners and you see the big red and the big yellow, you can tell this is where our kids are really without any instruction. And then our 1st graders and 2nd graders didn't have all of the instruction that we would have hoped. And so I think that right there kind of shows teachers make a difference. And so, 31% of our students in K and 2, based on DIBELS, are at grade level performance, which if you compare that to our early literacy is actually lower. And so that's where we said we needed to find out more data and find out what are the holes. So we've done even more assessments to really drill that down. It's amazing how many of our 1st graders actually can't rhyme. And rhyming is an early literacy skill. So those are the things that we're kind of working on. And then our STAR reading and our STAR math is pretty much the same as the district. The 33 and the 23%. And it's our baseline data, and we have lots of room for growth. So, again, we have hope, and we have lots of room for growth. So our first goal is around building a community, and there's really 3 pieces to this goal. It's about continuing to improve our student culture, our adult professional culture, and our parent engagement. And then we took each one of those goals and broke them down a little bit more in our benchmarks. So the first one is about our Tier 1 expectations, and it's really focused on behavior. And so we're doing that with focusing on what is expected and focusing on our core values. And we hope by really teaching the expected behaviors of our school and then our core values, we hope that that will decrease the inappropriate behaviors. I have to say, just having smaller class sizes, the inappropriate behaviors have already decreased, which is wonderful. Our next one is really about community partnerships. So our school, again, the populations that feed into our school are vastly different. And so we do have a real big pocket of students who need support, including food and clothing and sneakers. And so we're hoping to build our partnerships around the clothing and the shoes, because we don't want kids to not have sneakers and not be able to participate. And then our last one is around parent engagement. We use the Remind app, and we really want to be able to increase that. I do think the parents really like the Remind app because they just send like a text message, and it will then appear in my email and on my phone, and it's very easy for them to use. So we have a lot of key action steps. They really, again, sort of fall into those 3 kind of buckets. The student culture, we're doing a lot around Tier 1 expectations. We're using responsive classroom, and we're doing we call them the McCarthy-Mustang community meetings. And it's really funny because we live stream them, and so I run it, the teachers are on the Google Meet, so I ask the teachers the questions as if they're the students. So the students laugh, but I think everybody loves it. We have a really good turnout. Then it goes into our adult professional culture, and we have the Wednesday common planning has been really key for us, and we've used that to be very strategic. So kindergarten and 1st grade has used that as their time to learn Haggerty phonemic awareness. 2nd and 3rd grade has used that as their time for foundations, and they're diving deep into the phonics. And then 4th and 5th grade has used that time to look at the constructive responses. So they're building their rubrics, which will be the rubrics that are based off of MCAS, but we're using them as if this is what good writing should look like all year long in 4th and 5th grade. And so that's how we've been using our Wednesday, so that has been phenomenal for us. And then we have our leadership team who's giving us lots of input and staff meetings. And parent engagement, we have been collecting data from the parent engagement or from the parent opportunities like the visit at the beginning of the school year and parent conferences, and seeing how we can improve that and have more parents attending. So then our next area is equity and access. Excuse me. Sorry. It's just allergies. I promise. I have the doctor's letter if you need it. So the next area is really equity and access, and it's about improving our student learning. And so we shot for the sky, and we shot for 80%, which when you're looking at 30 and 50 is a big leap. But we know that only by having high expectations for ourselves are we going to rise. And so we kind of took that, and we really took it to heart. And so we are using that to actually have students build some goals for themselves. So in this area, we will have our data team meetings. Our data team meetings are a little bit different because we talk about all of the kids. So we want every child to be growing. We want every child to be progressing. And those that need acceleration or those that need remediation, we'll talk about them at our team meetings. So we talk about each one as a grade level. We're talking about really honing in under Tier 1 instruction and making that as strong as we can. And then we're sort of not in the same place as the Carroll School. We just hired our Title I tutor, and she just started on Monday. And our second one starts in December. But our support staff we just hired them, so we haven't really been able to put our interventions in place. So we have a plan, and we're happy to have the staff to finally be able to do that. And then our last goal is we're really combining our social emotional learning with academics. And we're going to have students create their own learning goals for themselves and have them monitor their progress and then celebrate their successes. And so we felt like this is one way to really personalize learning, but to have children be part of it. And we know that having kids make their own goals and monitor it also helps them with the social emotional learning. And so we felt like this is a great win. And it could be a lot of fun too. So our key action steps, again, really just fall around our assessment, analyzing them, progress monitoring, data meeting, really the common planning time, personalized learning time. We talked a lot at our school about personalized learning time and when is it the best to use personalized learning time versus maximizing your instructional time with students. And so we really feel like our personalized learning is for the remote days, for the time that the kids are not in front of their teacher, and when the teachers are in front of the students, that's when we want to maximize our Tier 1 instruction and maximize our learning. We're focused a lot on early literacy with preschool foundations. This year we'll have foundations pre-K to 3, and then also implementing phonemic awareness, and we will have some student learning goals. So those are our key actions and benchmarks, and just some thank yous to our school improvement council and to all of the teachers, because the teachers really had a huge part in making this plan. There wasn't anything on here that they felt that they weren't already doing, which I felt was like a huge piece and a huge success for us to be able to implement this plan, is for them to feel like they already have ownership and are doing the tasks.
Thank you. Mrs. Dunn?
Of course, I have a question, you know that. Thank you so much, Mrs. Stowe. It's a question going back on the demographics, actually. I know the data was from the DESE website. When you mentioned about your economically disadvantaged number and that it was at variance because included in that is the preschool.
Yep.
Is the 29% the number that the DESE is using for your school?
Yes.
Now, will that affect you at all as far as, and either you or Dr. Vidala, with funding?
No, it's a per pupil. So the funding is based on the number of students, not the percentage of students.
Okay, thank you, because I didn't want you running up against schools that were going, K to 5 with a demographic on the economically disadvantaged.
Yeah, so the Chapter 70 funding,
Yes.
the formula comes in per student, so the multiplier for the students, it's each individual student that is economically disadvantaged is counted individually.
Oh, good. And
Yep.
it doesn't affect your Title I
Yep.
funding at all, does it?
No, they remain to be a Title I school. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And thank you again, your plan is very good.
Mr. Monville?
Yeah, thank you for the comprehensive plan. Again, we're leaning on you and your staff and the teachers tremendously during this time. Just tremendous work. Just curious, kind of a off question is, with the preschoolers and the kindergarten, how are they, do they wear masks? How are they handling that?
We have a handful of kids who don't wear masks,
Right.
and that's only because of medical reasons.
Yep.
The preschoolers are pretty good. What's really funny is if it falls off, they don't know how to put it back on, but they're very willing to let someone put it on. And so we go through a lot of PPE supplies because there's so much hand over hand and putting on masks that they're constantly washing their hands, putting on gloves and all of that. But you'd be surprised, they're really pretty good about it.
Oh, that's great. It's great to hear.
I think some of them just don't know any differently at this
Right.
point.
That's great to
It's good,
hear.
but sad, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you.
Ms. Dockman?
Mrs. Tully, thank you for the presentation. I'm glad to hear that more of your students are able to access your building 4 days a week. You do have a completely split community. We I see a lot of your students who live up and down the Route 1 corridor, and the home life is completely different for most of those kids than the north and west side of your building. So I'm glad to hear that you're able to accommodate more students 4 days a week and allow them to access teachers, because teachers in front of students, I think, as Ms. Smith said, matters. It clearly matters. On a little side note, I'm happy you're here tonight before us, the day before Veterans Day. With your predecessor, I would attend a ceremony at your building with the former state representative Peter McCarthy, who's the brother of the gentleman who your building is named after, John McCarthy, who passed away in the Vietnam War. So it's just kind of interesting that you're here the night before Veterans Day. Typically tomorrow I would spend the morning at your building.
I know,
Yeah.
and I have to say this is probably the first year in a very long time that there hasn't been a Veterans Day like celebration.
Yeah, well, perhaps we could put it on pause and take it up when we're able to at another point. It is significant for our city and for your building.
Thank you.
Mr. Miko?
Tully, thank you for being here. Early on in your presentation, you mentioned social emotional learning and how that is one of your strengths, but there is certainly room to grow, and that to me is so important. As an educator myself, I've said this before, if kids don't feel safe, if kids don't feel okay, learning really won't happen. So I really appreciate you and your staff for making that a key component of what you do, making sure kids are okay, making sure kids, as Mr. Hockman said, giving back to the community that needs it. So I just want to commend you and your staff for doing a great job. You have such a diverse community from preschoolers to fifth graders and demographics in between. So I just want to thank you for all you do. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mrs. Tully, for being here. I did want to say one thing I noticed in that I loved, and I know you said it could be a fun thing, but it was the student-based goals. I thought that was really something that will go off. That caught my eye when right, probably the same reaction,
If the kids
right?
own it, man, it's going to be awesome.
That's excellent. I think that's really involving them and giving them kind of their own step tool to say, all right, here's my first building block, and I need to get to the finish line. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for everything you guys do in your building. It's incredible work, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. I do have to say, one of my special ed teachers, she was the first to do it. So we took our special ed students and their samples, and that's what we used to teach the rest of the staff. And she was so proud because I think it was the first time her students became the role models for the school. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to just celebrate and to get the momentum to get moving.
That's awesome. Let us know how it goes.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great. Thank you so much. Excellent presentation. And last but not least, Mr. Thoreau from the West Memorial Elementary School.
Good evening, everyone. So I will be talking about West, and like everybody else, I will start with the demographic data. So we are a smaller school. 27.7% of our students are high needs. 15.9% are economically disadvantaged. We do have a very small English language learner population. One of our staff members is actually taking their SEI course and asked if we had any, and then we'd actually pulled up that we do not currently have any English language learners in the building. So that was our last year's numbers. For right now, we actually have 0. And we have a 17.8% special ed population in the building as well. Our numbers stayed roughly the same from last year to this year. We did lose about 9 students. If you noticed, there's a bit of a dip in right around 3rd grade. So our 3rd grade is one of our smaller cohorts, but it has followed down from the previous years. We have about 24 students who are remote, so we have a small population of remote students that are typically hooked up with the teachers from the center school. So I want to thank Ms. Orfanos and her teachers for accepting and welcoming our students in. It's been pretty good so far. We've had no complaints from any of the parents or anything like that. So we do have a large portion of our school is in. We have roughly 30 cohort C students at the moment. Was able to bring in 3 or 4 in the last couple of weeks. Hopefully going to bring in a few more coming up. So celebrations and focus areas. I've only been at West for about 10 weeks or so, so I've been able to get a handle on what I've been able to see, but I wanted to include the staff. They've been there a lot longer than I have, so they played a large portion in this. So at one of our last staff meetings, I did an answer garden to find out what they thought the focus areas and the celebration should be. And overwhelmingly, the strong PTO, family involvement, and the participation of staff. The staff, the families, the PTO, they're the biggest asset of West. They're the rock stars that make them all the magic happen. We had a very successful PTO event, the drive-through trunk or treat, where a bunch of the families came. Like there were 75 cars that went through. Great participation on Class Dojo with room parents, things like that. So they're definitely something to be celebrated. And teachers' dedication to learning. Teachers are there well after the school lets out, well before the school actually opens. And the social emotional well-being. They want to make sure that everybody is actually doing and feeling safe in school and getting exactly what they need. Some of the focus areas are learning all of the new tools that we have, the Math and Focus, all the Renaissance suites, the apps, and all the additional important instructional support tools. A lot of things were presented all at once, and they're feeling a little overwhelmed here and there, but there's been a lot of great teacher leaders working with Emily Moore. Myself, I have both of my 5th grade teachers and a couple of my 3rd grade and the kindergarten have all been really great proponents of being able to go for other teachers to ask them questions and providing additional supports when needed. And just balancing that in-person and hybrid learning, figuring out exactly how to do all of this with kids in front of them and kids at home, figuring out when do we put all these when do we put all of the Tier 1 instruction in place, when do we use the supports. Like everybody else, the data is a snapshot in time. Students missed out on a large portion of last year of having in-person and teacher learning. So our numbers do kind of reflect that. The reading proficiency, we're at 41.8%. Again, a large portion of partially meeting at 46.6. For our math, again, 30.7, which falls in line with a lot of the rest of the district scores. Again, partially meeting was one of our bigger areas. And early literacy, 54.1, which was a high note, which was great. Looking at the double scores like some of the other schools did as well, there's a correlation as well in there. That there are areas that we have deficits on, but we're working towards. Areas of strength, 64% of students in grade 1 were at or above benchmark in early literacy, which was really great to see. 45% of our grade 2 students were at above the benchmark in ELA, and 50% in grade 4 were also at or above benchmark in ELA. Areas of concern seem to be more along the math lines. 69.3% of students were below benchmark, so math is definitely an area that we're going to be working on. 58.2% of students in grades 2 through 5 were below benchmark in ELA, and 10.1% of students are at urgent intervention in KN1 in the area of ELA as well. So definitely areas that we need to focus on. Getting there, we do have hope, working on building that community and equity and access. So for our building a community, West has a very tight-knit, nice community. Everyone's very involved. COVID has been hard for everybody, hard for the students, hard for the teachers, hard for the staff, hard for the parents. So we want to work on continuing to build those relationships. So we're going to improve a sense of community and collaborative relationships between the staff, students, and parents, as measured by progress towards a student culture, adult professional cultural, and parent engagement benchmarks. So the next couple of slides, I kind of broke them down into the different areas. Adult professional culture, we'll work on improving that satisfaction above baseline levels, feedback from staff. We'll post and pre-assessment. I've already done the pre-assessment to get kind of a baseline level of where everybody is at. Participation in school events, collaboration, observations, some of the key initiatives and actions, morale boosting activities. We've already, just before school started, I did a root beer float. I've seen it online. It was when ants get together in a flood, they float, so I went through and was able to find a root beer float. Made root beer floats in the office, it was pretty cool. Currently, right now, my guidance counselor and I, we made a social or a wellness bingo board that we have up in the teacher's room. So it's a bunch of different activities of sleep in late, go to bed late, sleep in, order takeout one night, walk 10,000 steps per day, that kind of thing. If anybody gets bingo, we'll take their duty for the day and go up and do recess or lunch for them so they can have an extra period off. Collaboration between staff. I've implemented a weekly newsletter, the weekly Wildcat that I send out on Fridays that has all the information for the upcoming week, dates, activities, things like that. Obviously pushing into areas of weakness or frustration. Again, a lot of the technology. We do have all of our Chromebooks and our tablets, which has been great. Just getting all of those up and running, and additional activities as needed. Student culture, again, we're going to kind of do the same thing. I want to make sure that the kids feel safe in school. I want them to be excited about school. If kids aren't excited, they're not going to learn as well, so I want to get them up and excited. They are excited to be in the building. I just would like to keep that going by doing all different activities. Using our social emotional curriculums that were implemented in the last few years. We're going to do the 5th grade student council. We're going to get that up and running hopefully soon, so the 5th graders can have a say in doing some of our spirit days, things like that. Positive interactions, works assignments for student recognition. We're actually doing Kindness Week this week because Friday is World Kindness Day. So we had a little slip that said, I caught you being kind because, and we're handing them out to students as we see them in the hallway. Connections between the staff, admin, and students and families. Morning announcements. We've been doing mindfulness activities at the beginning of the week, doing funny jokes at the end of the week, announcing all the birthdays, staff birthdays, anything fun like that. Student contests. We're going to end up using Freckle and Mayan for the numbers of minutes of the kids read. February or March reading calendar, getting the kids excited about reading, to win a book at the end, things like that. And parent engagement, again, using the pre and post assessment, want to make sure that the parents feel connected and feel supported by the school. I've already done the pre-assessment, so working on some of the areas that were strengths and weaknesses that the parents felt already. Working on utilization assessment in Class Dojo for communication, as well as I have a weekly Wildcat Parents Edition, which is the same thing. I send it out to the parents with all of the important dates, information that's going on. Attendance of PTO events, teacher communication regarding progress. So we used a lot of the assessment reports during parent-teacher conferences, during dojos, things like that, to let them know how their students are doing. I go outside and I talk to the kids when they come in, when they're leaving, just to try to get to know as many of them as I can from here out, because I can't recognize half of them, and then additional activities as needed. And for equity and access, just like typically everyone else, we're going along with the district goals. So utilizing the multi-tiered system of support, we're going to say at least 80% of grades K to 5 students will either exceed the state benchmark in star rating in math or improve by at least 5% above their baseline levels. We do have many students that are above benchmark already. I don't want to leave them behind. I want all students to be able to make progress. So we're going to push them as well as the students who are not at benchmark currently. So to do that, we've given all the STAR assessments, utilizing the data this last month to work on building our intervention groups. We've started our IST process last week, so we have brought in a couple of kids into those meetings as well to figure out what kind of supports they would need. So our interventions of math and ELA have started. I started them last week. So we're going to meet every couple of weeks. We're going to progress monitor to make sure that kids are making progress. If they are, then we'll be able to push them out and bring in some more students who might need some more supports. Sharing progress with the parents, with the staff to find out, hey, Johnny's great in this area, but we need some support in this one. Here's something that you can do at home. So making sure it's a collaborative association across all areas. Monthly data meetings with the teachers and the reading specialist, math specialist, and then reassessing after each level of benchmark assessments. So again in January and then again in May. Sorry, I talk really fast, so I don't think everybody knows.
We do have a curfew, just so you.
My kids are asleep probably, so.
Any questions from the committee? Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you very much. Again, this is a very nice school plan, but I really want to compliment you on the adult culture piece that you have in there about strengthening the ties among your staff. I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted you to know I appreciate that. And the West School is pretty special. You have a very nice, very, very cohesive school there, and, you know, just a lot of fun. I saw that Cruella DeVille was there with all the puppies just a
Yes,
couple
we did our
weeks ago.
101 Dalmatians.
Yeah,
Yes, that was very
yeah,
fun.
it
Had
was-
good staff involvement in that.
That was nice, but yeah, I wanted to compliment you on the adult culture piece. Thank you.
Mr. Olympio?
Yeah. Thank you, great presentation, tremendous job, really jumping in, like you said, 10 weeks, and really keeping the continuity in the school. Great feedback from parents and students as well, so you're doing a great job, and we appreciate everything that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, along the lines of Mr. Olympio, thank you for jumping in, you know, during a difficult time for us to fill a void in your position at that school. So thank you for doing that for the city. It's noted and it's appreciated. I can tell you as well that I am around the Brown School frequently, and there are several people there who miss you and speak extremely highly of you. Typically, we would have met you, you know, in a non-COVID situation. We would have met you before this. This is my first time, I think, talking to you, as I recall, at least.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, so it's nice meeting you, and thank you for the job that you're doing.
Thank you.
Mr. Arnottis?
Just to echo Mr. Hoffman, welcome. It's nice to meet you. Thank you for coming, and keep up the good work. I know this hasn't been easy for any of you. Thank you.
Mr. Thurl, thank you for being here, and great job. Also, as Mr. Hockman said, I want to thank you for your great work at the Brown School. I heard really great things about how you worked with kids and just were always around for them, and just did a great job with them, and now in this transition to the West School, so I just want to thank you. You mentioned something early on about, you know, you've only been there 10 weeks, and right away you just went to the stakeholders, you went to the teachers, the staff, the parents, and basically listened to them for feedback. And whether you're in your first 10 weeks or 10 years, that's the way to go. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate it.
Mr. Thoreau, excellent job. I'll echo something that Mrs. Dunn said at the beginning to Mr. Magno, and you've also said it to me. I think one of the key strengths of stepping in the way that you have is that you've honored what they've previously done, and you've enhanced it yourself as well. So some of the creative ideas that you've brought in, but also honoring what's already been there, and I think that's helped you build a strong culture there already, and you've been doing a great job, so we really appreciate it. So thank you very much for your presentation. Mayor Betancourt, do a quick recess?
Very quick. We do have that curfew.
Yes.
All right, we'll go back to the agenda, thank you. And we'll return and go back to item number 2. We do have some regular school committee meeting minutes to be approved from October 27th, 2020.
Motion to receive and approve.
Thank you for the motion by Mrs. Dunn to receive and approve, seconded by Mr. Arnottis. Any comments? Mrs. Dunn.
One correction, and it's really just to keep the record straight. On the third page of our minutes, we always have the schedule of meetings, and we just need to make a correction on, actually, it was our last meeting on October 27th. If you just flip to page 3, you'll see regular school committee meeting. We just need to add in there that we had school improvement plans of 4 of our schools at that meeting, just to keep the record clear. I know in the minutes it would say it, but on that schedule, it's part of the record too. So I'd just like to ask that that be corrected and amended.
That makes sense. All right, with that amendment, roll call vote, please, for approval. Dr. Lord, you have honors.
Oh, Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Ms. Dunn?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We do have a couple of warrants to be approved. Mr. Olympio?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve warrant number 4619 in the amount of $92,635.19, subject to audit.
Second.
Okay, thank you for the motion by Mr. Olympio to approve warrant 4619, seconded by Mr. Amico. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Ms. Griffin Dunn?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion for warrant number 4621 in the amount of $1,453,942.67, subject to audit.
Second.
Okay. Thank you for the motion by Mr. Olympio for approval of warrant 4621, seconded by Mr. Amico. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Arnottis?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Ms. Griffin Dunn?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Next, I'd like to go to continued business, and Mrs. Dunn, I'd ask you for an update on our Welch School MSBA project, please.
Sure, thanks, Mr. Chairman. The Welch School Building Committee met last Thursday on November 5th. It was our regularly scheduled monthly meeting, and it was an interesting one because we were presented with a really nice presentation by the design team, and they were working documents with some sketches of what they were talking about and looking at, and they explained how what the process entails at the moment is looking at repairs, renovations, and addition. And a new school is a 4th category, and that's a separate presentation. And one of the things that they're working on very, very seriously at the moment is they're studying the heating and ventilation options, trying to find the most cost-effective and environmentally effective heating and cooling units for the school. So it was a really, really in-depth analysis. They gave us a great overview of it. And that, of course, is ongoing too. They're obtaining prices and all kinds of details on each of these, I don't want to say units because they're not univents. Univents is that's like a very technical term. I didn't realize it. So anyhow, then the next item that we discussed, and this is a really serious one, is the committee is going to be making a decision at our next monthly meeting between design bid build versus construction management at risk. And it's 2 different methods of working on a project. There are pros and cons on each side. The team did a wonderful job of explaining it to the members, and they've provided materials, so the school building committee members will be studying those. If they want to have another review session, we're going to schedule one for anyone that wanted that. And then they'll be taking a vote at the December meeting of the school building committee. And the reason we have a vote, and also because we are working on a deadline with some other approvals of turning the materials into the MSBA to be able to have them discuss the project on the timeline that we're working on, which again is always a very aggressive timeline, so that we can get the project underway and completed with the greatest of speed. So during this time, in addition to those two meetings, the one we had last week and the one we'll have in December, there are small working groups that are working on very specific areas of the project, and then they report back to the full Welch School Building Committee at the monthly meetings. So again, the next meeting will be the 3rd of December. We're working on a public presentation that will probably take place that first week of December as well, just to let everyone know, what's going on and where we stand. So it's getting exciting. It's getting really interesting. They had pictures at the meeting. It was great. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. I'd like to go back to the superintendent's report, a couple of important items. Dr. Vidal, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I wanted just to provide a couple quick updates on our reopening. So the state did release new health metrics, which I will review. I know that there has been quite a few questions about the feasibility of a return to full in-person learning, so I'll have a touch on that. I wanted to update people on technology, winter sports. Last meeting we talked about the parent survey. I wanted to give an update on the faculty survey, a little bit on Staff Appreciation Week, and then Dr. Lord is going to share a great update from the high school career and technical educational program of criminal justice that was recently improved. On the screen now, you'll see the updated health metrics. We are a city with a population over 50,000. So the new health metrics for the gray, green, yellow, or red indicators are to the right. At our last meeting, we were anticipating going into the red based on the old metric and maintaining our hybrid model. Now, based on this metric, after last week's data, we were a moderate risk or yellow community, and our positivity rate was at 3.12%, and our cases climbed over 10, but we maintained in the yellow. So we're anticipating that we'll get new data this week as well. Our numbers do continue to climb a little bit within the community, but our schools remain fairly safe, as we discussed last week, with really mitigating the risk of all the protective devices that we have people wearing and the safety measures. So the guidance from DESE and from the governor is to prioritize in-person learning across all levels, unless there is suspected in-school transmission. So that's the one time that we said that we will definitely shut down schools, is if there's evidence of widespread in-school transmission. We have not seen that, so that is not currently something that we would be looking at. Districts and schools that are designated gray, green, yellow, should be really focusing on full in-person learning if feasible, and I think that's really the key word right there. Schools that are in the red communities should look at a hybrid model and maximize in-person learning. So really thinking about the feasibility of full-time in-person learning, I go back to what we did over the summer with our reopening committee and our feasibility study. Our goal from the beginning, from back in July as we were talking, and it continues to be the same goal of returning as many students safely, as many staff and students to in-person learning. And we really want to maximize our learning, and we want to address the students' holistic needs. And I think this has really been the through line that we've talked about the entire time. Now, when we talked about our feasibility study, we were looking at a full return was possible with 3-foot distancing across our schools. Right now, we're looking at continuing the 6-foot distancing because that is the guidance from our Board of Health, but it's also really what is keeping our kids safe. So we're really minimizing the number of close contacts because we have the 6-foot distancing, and we're not seeing in-school transmission because we still maintain that 6-foot distancing. That continues to be the recommendation of the CDC and the recommendation of our public health department. So at this point, we're not recommending going inside of 6 feet. We also, if we were to go full in person, transportation guidelines have not changed. And so if the governor is looking for schools to go in person, we're pushing for additional guidance around transportation. So just as a measurement tool, last year there were 6,000 students in the PBD public schools, 4,000 of them access transportation from school transportation. This year we have about 1,700. accessing on a daily basis because we can fit about a third, which works within our hybrid model because we have 1,700 on one day and 1,700 on another day. So we can get about 3,400 kids, and we can really maximize that. But at this time, we're currently recommending, this is our first week in yellow with the high numbers, and we're still seeing additional cases in the community, but we're not seeing them permeate into the schools. So we are currently recommending remaining in our hybrid model, making sure that we still have all of our safety protocols in place, and making sure that we maintain the social distancing, that we maintain, I'm going to go back to this one for a second. We want to really maintain social distancing, mask wearing, and hand washing. We found that those are the three biggest mitigation factors. I do have several other updates, but I think this is a hot topic, so I'll pause here to see if there are questions or comments from the committee. Mrs. Dunn?
Just to share with everyone, as you heard earlier, I was speaking with the representative from the Department of Transportation on the safe routes to school. And the conversation was really very interesting because she was telling me about the difficulties that districts are having because of the transportation guidance that has come from DESE and how that is impacting so many of the schools in the way you've just described, and also with the changes in traffic at the schools. And she said it really is something that's just very, very noticeable, very different. They're watching it, and her department is actually working on various aspects of trying to make sure that everyone continues to be safe as they arrive and depart from schools. So it was interesting to hear that is it's on a statewide basis too.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Any other comments, Mr. Hockman?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Dr. Vidala, thank you for your hard work in this area. It's all-consuming in your position, and I appreciate your efforts here and your comprehensive analysis and continued focus on getting increased number of students and staff in schools. One thing I would like to see is if we could, I know you mentioned the local Board of Health and the CDC are currently have a recommendation of 6 foot of social distancing, but DESE has a recommendation of 3 feet of social distancing. And I just want to bring that up because of the data you brought up, not to have a conversation really about that. We know the numbers. There are some local school districts who are experimenting with 4.5 feet of social distancing for elementary school students, as we see virtually no transmission in schools, particularly for the younger grades. And just thinking about that moving forward, I'm not pressing anything tonight, but just as we move forward, perhaps we saw a lot of data tonight about the gaps that are developing and being realized, and the amount of work that our talented and energetic staff are going to go through to bridge those gaps. And obviously, I think one thing we all agree upon is the more time students have in front of, with teachers in front of them, the better off we all are. So I'd just like to perhaps see that conversation maybe starting. I'm not sure if it has begun with the Department of Health in the city. And in terms of the transportation issue, I do realize that's an impediment. However, I think historically, as we raise busing fees, we see less people utilizing buses. So maybe we just raise the busing fee and more people will drive their students. I'm obviously joking. So I do realize transportation is a big problem with the reintroduction of more students in buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Any other comments? All right, turn it back to you, Dr. Vidala.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple more things. You heard from the West School that they have gotten all of their devices. We also had, I believe, the Burke School received all their devices, and we're looking at deliveries tomorrow and early next week. So all of our 2 through 5 students should have all of their Chromebooks. We've begun the distribution, and they continue to arrive. We should see all of those in. We had mentioned Thanksgiving at the last meeting. We are anticipating that the Chromebooks for grades 6 and 9 will be in towards the end of next week as well, and we are currently still anticipating full distribution, one-to-one, fully out in everybody's hands with the brand new devices by Thanksgiving. So that is some good news on the technology front. I did want to give an update on winter sports as well. So for our high school students who are participating in fall sports, the last day of competition is on next Friday, the 20th. So that's when Fall 1 ends. And so there's been a little bit of a process that goes on with the MIAA. So the governing body, the EEA, the guidelines were released on Friday of last week, and they talked about the moderate risk and high risk sports and the low risk sports for the winter. So the MIAA has approved games for the winter season, but not state tournaments, which is not a surprise. We knew that that was coming. So the next stage with MIAA is the COVID task force. They will decide, based on the EEA guidelines, whether or not modifications need to be made to the different sports. So for example, in the fall, soccer didn't have any throw-ins. They had to do kick-ins and things like that. So they modified the sport rules. So the COVID task force has to do that, and then each sport will then have their competition committee that votes. So that's happening between this week and next week, and the big date for us is that the Northeast Conference athletic directors are meeting on the 19th, and they'll be able to discuss those recommendations from the MIAA and what our options are for the winter. So, I think at the next school committee meeting I'll have more information, but I just wanted to give a timeline. There's some discussion about delaying the start of the sport until after the Christmas break or the holiday break in December and starting in January. And then there are some options to start practice earlier if that's feasible based on what the MIAA says. So we'll have more information after the ADs meet on the 19th. There may also be some options for higher risk sports maybe pushing into the fall too, which is when football was going to happen, which would start towards the end of February. So there's more information coming, but I wanted to at least get out, this is where we're at, and we'll have more information at our next meeting, which is on the 24th. We did do the family survey and the faculty survey, so I did want to go quickly through some of the results of the faculty survey. We had 382 responses across the district, and they were from teachers, administrators, paraprofessionals. We had food service people, clerks, and custodians, as well as bus drivers. So we had quite a comprehensive group of people that responded. The most responses were from teachers and paras, which do represent two of our biggest bargaining units. And so we asked if people were satisfied with the communication from the district, and at this point we had 78% satisfaction and 80% from building principals, which is pretty much in line with what the family survey said. We asked questions about instruction and specifically about our professional development and how people felt prepared to work with their students. In the in-person model, we had 84% positivity. During the hybrid at-home days, we had 61%, and during the fully remote days, we had 67% positivity. So I think this is pretty consistent with what we see from families as well. I think the biggest struggle that we're currently seeing, where we're providing the most support, is those at-home hybrid days. In terms of resources, we asked if people had sufficient technology. This was, did we provide you with sufficient technology to do your job? We had 62% satisfaction rate with that. Asking about, do your students have a device and stable internet? We're at about 50%, which was interesting because our parent response was about 98%. So I do think that there may be a gap there in when kids are not logging in. We may be assuming that it's the technology, but it may actually be a different barrier. So it is something that we want to go in. It could be that. It could be another barrier. It could be that the people without devices or stable internet didn't respond to our parent survey. So there's quite a bit there that we're still trying to peel back the onion on. And we asked teachers if they're satisfied with the online resources, and 73.8% were satisfied with the online resources that we've purchased this year. We asked about health and safety. 67% were satisfied with the protocols. 58% said that they feel safe at work based on the protocols. And actually the best number here that we were very happy with, 78% of people felt that they had access to sufficient PPE. And then we talked about the level of support. 70% of people felt supported by central office, 83% by their principal, and 94% by their colleagues. And I think that as you get closer to the people, this isn't anticipated. So as you get closer to the school and to the children, we see. And I think that it's a huge credit to our staff of how much they support each other. And that's really, they're the boots on the ground. And so that really leads me into my next thing. Every year there's Teacher Appreciation Week in May, and I feel like our educators maybe didn't quite get the same appreciation that they would have last May. So I've talked to our principals, and I'd like to put it out to our PTOs. If there's any year for 2 weeks of staff appreciation, this is certainly it. So in Peabody, we're going to recognize staff appreciation, just to recognize the hard work and dedication of our staff, for all of our staff, especially those working in our schools. So we're going to do a week-long staff appreciation week, December 7th to the 11th. We'll still have Teacher Appreciation Week in May, but I feel like this is just one opportunity for us to really recognize the hard work of the staff and just to show the appreciation that we have. So be on the lookout for that. I know our PTOs will be really they'll be really instrumental in how that is rolled out, but I know there's also local businesses and local groups that always like to figure out a way that they could recognize that. And so we'll probably be doing some raffles at the school, and maybe some sort of ice cream socials and lunches and things like that, but just different ways to appreciate our staff. And so if businesses or people want to get involved, they can feel free to reach out to my office. And the last update, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lord, because he was so instrumental in getting this wonderful CTE program up and running at the high school. So I'm going to let him take the lead on this one.
Thanks, Dr. Vidala. This is always a wonderful thing to be able to share with a community when you bring in a program like this. I think it's probably speaking to the choir here that everyone understands the value of CTE programs. It's wonderful that the state of Massachusetts makes these kinds of commitments. This one was started a year and a half ago with Maria and her team. Putting together a proposal, and there's a series of meetings that need to happen. It's a very lengthy process. I think they had their last walkthrough about 2 weeks ago, right before the October 1st deadline had to be posted to the DESE, and I think we had 26 students that were officially logged to this program, which will be reflected in our funding for next year, which is great. These kinds of programs start out with a big advisory board. You already know the Chief of Police, Fire Chief, Kim Murtagh from the prison system's involved in this, Ron White from the Cataldo, several probation officers, and a couple of parents. We're involving colleges, and all of that is to get the seniors out into a real-world experience sometime in the last couple of months of their high school life. We really want for them to have a shadowing experience, a real-life world experience that is happening in this criminal justice program, and that's that last goal. I believe there are 6 seniors right now that are shooting for that, to get involved in one of those personal protective services organizations, and hopefully we'll see that come to fruition in April. It's going to depend on the schedule, a little bit on the hybrid, a little bit on who's available, some of the COVID things. Maybe everybody will have a vaccine by then. We'll see. But that's the goal, and this is a goal for every one of the CTE programs, to get the kids out into those real-world programs. I'll give a shout-out to the medical assisting program that Ms. Spinoza is running. It's awesome. They get connected with a Leahy Clinic. The way Mr. Magno set up the schedule for the high school, the kids can spend a couple of full days at the hospital, Thursdays and Fridays, periods 5, 6, and 7, really working out very well for the students there. And the culinary program is also entertaining people outside the community on a regular basis. And they had a huge boost in the electronics program. The kids are all learning how to fly drones. I mean, it's really pretty amazing what they're doing with the electronics program. So anyway, some wonderful things happening with CTE. We're going to continue to take this to scale, see if we can get some more programs. But that's really an awesome thing to be able to share with the community. And Mr. Magno told a little bit about it, but big shout out to the CTE program for getting that thing going. Very excited about that. Thanks, Dr. Vidala.
And in our packet, in the school committee packet, you'll see a copy of the letter from DESE approving the program, which, as Dr. Lord indicated, was done with anticipation for our students being able to be counted in the October 1st data. So with that concludes the superintendent's report. I'll turn it over to Mayor Betancourt. If there's any other additional questions from the committee.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Vidala. Thank you, Dr. Lord. Okay, public participation. I'd like to open it up now. If we have any calls, people, any residents, parents looking to speak, Dr. Vidal, do we have anybody that's raised their hand?
At this point, we don't. We may have gotten kicked off of PATV, though. I'm not sure if, oh, I think we're back. We have one more. We have Erica Barrett I'm going to bring in. I think we're back on. Erica, please unmute yourself, state your name and address for the committee.
Hi, Erica Barrett. I live on 16 Cedar Grove Ave. Tonight I'm calling, I want to appreciate the update on winter sports. It's great news, but I still have another question regarding football. We've been calling our football coaches every week, asking when practices are going to start. We've been told football sent in a detailed safety plan and was denied. From my understanding, per guidelines, Peabody is allowed to let our kids practice, of course, no tackling. Everyone in our division, Marblehead, Beverly, Swampscott, are all practicing. Structure and support has never been more important this year. Who is responsible for making these decisions, and what is the process to get our athletes back on the field and in the weight room? We are very fortunate to have amazing coaches at Peabody High. Let them safely coach and support our kids. I do know it's easier to say no, but our athletes need their coaches, especially during this pandemic. They can practice safely. I know I'm speaking for a lot of parents. We are all trying to be positive and supportive during these hard times. Can we please communicate and support our athletes and keep them on track? We need to do this together. I'm asking that someone please overturn the decision and start letting our kids start practicing together. You're very fortunate. That football team has been very supportive through this whole pandemic, and I think they need to be recognized. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Barrett. We will follow up with that.
Absolutely. I don't see any more. I don't see any more hands raised for public participation.
Okay. All right. So let's go. We do not have any written communications today, so let's go to our subcommittee reports. Education, Mr. Hockman?
No report at this time.
Okay. Finance will hold. School safety?
Nothing to report.
Athletics and wellness, Mr. Hockman?
I do plan on having a meeting next week. I did have an opportunity to meet with Sandy Drover of the Healthy Peabody Collaborative and talked about, and I'd like to invite her to a meeting to describe to the community at large the tremendous work that the Healthy Peabody Collaborative does with our students. You know, one of the things that came up during the course of our conversation was we would have typically had Red Ribbon Week in October, and due to the current state of the world, we weren't able to have that. So I'd like to perhaps work collaboratively with Sandy, Dr. Vidala, maybe Mr. Mitchell, maybe PATV, and see if we can do some virtual training that would have occurred during Red Ribbon Week and some of the other things that Ms. Drover and her colleagues perform at the collaborative.
Thank you, Mr. Hockman. Quality and standards, Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet, everyone, you have two policies. One is the recently approved policy on admission to our CTE programs. And through the good work of Mrs. Maccarelli, it was brought to our attention that there was a policy on file that basically the new policy is going to supersede that. The simplest thing to do tonight is, because we had the policy read on September 2nd, would be to just have it read this evening for a second reading, and then it will supersede the policy in the book, and it will just replace it. So what I'm going to do tonight is just make a motion that we approve for a second reading the newest Peabody Veterans Memorial High School admissions policy for career and technical education programs. So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. You've heard the motion. It was seconded by Mr. Arnottis. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Amico?
Yes.
Mr. Onotis?
Yes.
Mr. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Olympio?
Yes.
Ms. Griffin Dunn?
Yes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Parent and student advisory boards.
Oh.
Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right now, I'm obtaining the names of the student leaders for the Student Advisory Board, and MASC is going to provide probably a Zoom meeting for all the student advisory boards across the state, just to give them some guidance on their role and responsibility. And as far as the parent advisory board, as I said earlier, I was speaking with the representative from the Safe Routes to School. I do hope to be able to schedule that in December, and I'm going to check that with all of the parent advisory board members, as well as the PTOs, to make sure we don't interfere with the PTO meeting. If possible, I'm going to try to have a very quick first preliminary meeting for PAB in November. It would probably be, my gosh, I have the date written down, November 23rd, but don't write it in ink yet. And Dr. Vidala, you would be our first guest. It's always a nice opportunity for the superintendent to meet the parents, and this year it'll be on Zoom, but it'll still be a tradition. So I will let you know, I will let everyone know, and I'm going to work on that, again, with Mrs. Macarelli, our right hand.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunn.
Thank you.
Building and Grounds, Mr. Amico?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to recognize the custodial staff for keeping our buildings clean and sanitized, our grounds. I mean, they're doing a great job. The fact that we haven't had a lot of cases goes to the point that they are really doing a great job of keeping our buildings clean, so I wanted to recognize them. And I also wanted to recognize our school resource officers, our police department. They're just tremendous. They're role models. They keep our buildings safe, and they keep our grounds safe, especially during traffic time. So I just wanted to recognize them as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Both comments are very well stated, Mr. Amico. Very true. Okay, Special Education Parent Advisory Board, Mr. Olympio?
Yep, I know I've been saying this for a few weeks now, but I want to check Dr. Vidala's schedule, Ms. Chioda's schedule. I'd like to have some type of Zoom meeting really in the next few weeks to give parents an opportunity to, ask some questions.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
City Council and Legislative Delegation, Mr. Arnottis?
Yes, we have a meeting scheduled Monday night, November 16th at 6 p.m. here at the Higgins.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, new business. We did have one item that was brought forward. Mrs. Dunn had asked to give a report from the Mass Association of School Committee's 75th annual meeting, and thank you for being a part of that, as you always are for us, Mrs. Dunn. But if there's no objection, I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Dunn for a quick update on some timely matters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for letting me bring this forward this evening. The reason this is under the new business, and it's basically late communication, is because the report was prepared and sent out this morning. And so in the interest of timeliness, I thought that it would be good to just have this presentation tonight, give you each a copy to request, and I will make a motion that this be received so it becomes part of the record. And then just to give you a very quick overview of the annual meeting, it really was very good. So first, I'd just like to make a motion to receive the report from MASC 75th annual meeting.
Second.
Okay, you've heard the motion for approval of receipt of the report by Mrs. Dunn, seconded by Mr. Hockman. All in favor? That's a vote.
Okay, thanks.
Mrs. Dunn?
Thank you. And as you'll see, that report really speaks for itself. It gives you a complete breakdown of all of the resolutions and what MASC will be working on as initiatives this coming year. And we're going to request that there be a moratorium on MCAS for the current high school sophomores. Because of the COVID and the COVID situation and the difficulties with the online learning, and it's across the board. There are just so many variables, and they're looking for equity for all the students. So MASC will be advocating for that. They had, as always, it's really interesting. They had a couple of floor fights and amendments and things. This is all in the report, all in the report. But they, seeking additional funding, increased federal support, monitoring of attendance. The motion on the monitoring of attendance, that was a really volatile conversation, and that was tabled. And these were very thoughtful resolutions. They're all submitted by school committees and by the resolutions subcommittee. And I think you'll enjoy reading that. And really, it was a pleasant surprise to see that report out so quickly because the conference was Saturday. One of the things that I would like to bring your attention to is the All-State School Committee. That's a group that are recognized by the MASC Board of Directors, and we are part of Division 1. So here in Division 1, Mayor Tom McGee, the chairperson of the Lynn School Committee, has been nominated and approved as a member of the All-State School Committee. And Peabody is also a member of Division 8, the vocational division, and the representative from Essex Tech, Val Gilman, was nominated and it has been selected as a member of the All-State School Committee. So it's quite an honor to have people on that committee, and it's a credit to what they do with their committees. And then just to give you an idea of course, it was a very different conference, but they had over 150 people on a Zoom call during the day, and in the morning they had a keynote speaker. And Dr. Vidal, I almost messaged you during her presentation. It was a presentation by Dr. Khalees Warnham, and she is the Senior Director of Educational Equity for the Brookline Public Schools, and she's a cultural proficiency coach. She gave an incredible presentation about equity, and it was honestly everything Dr. Vidal is trying to do, and Dr. Lord, with the strategic plan, with our faculty all trying to work in this direction. It was extremely interesting, and I will bring forward some of the things that she recommended, at different meetings to ask if the school committee could do those and embrace those. I'll work with Dr. Vidal on that, but fascinating speaker. It would be really great to have her speak. Seriously, what she brought forward was interesting, and it turned out to be a really good day. And it was a different way to celebrate the 75th annual meeting of MASC, but it worked. So, as always, thank you very much for letting me be a delegate. That was fun to be involved in the voting, because that was, again, interesting. You had to have 2 devices in order to participate as a delegate and to vote. Because of the need of the technology, and it was a great day.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Dunn.
Thank you.
Our next meeting is November 24th. Items for that meeting for the agenda will be handled in the regular course of business. If there's nothing further, we'll move to adjourn. And thank you, everyone, for a good meeting. We covered a lot of ground today. Okay. Thank you.